We landed a big one, folks. We got the big one. The president is on this episode of the Full Scale Outdoors podcast. The president of the Twin Cities chapter of the Muskies Inc., Jim Doyle, talked Muskies. So we did a bass episode with Pekacek. Oh, I think I said it right that time. And then now we get your Musky episode. And last weekend was the Minnesota Musky opener. And from what I saw on social media, it was a pretty good opener. Some really big fish were caught. So we talk about that and many, many, many other things. So if you are into musky fishing, if you've been interested about musky fishing and think about maybe joining Muskies Inc., well, you should. And also listen to this podcast, and he'll tell you what you need to know. But really good one. This one kind of stayed on track for the most part, oddly enough, and filled with all sorts of good stuff. So here we go. This is the Full Scale Outdoors podcast with Jim Doyle. Oh, here we go, boys.
Go.
Ooh, I love that sound. This is a good one. In a band, huh?
Yeah, make hundreds of dollars sometimes.
So, yeah, if it doesn't cost you a couple $100 to get to where you're playing,
Yeah.
you'll come out ahead. What band?
Oh, we're just a cover band, rock cover band called Low Voltage.
Low Voltage.
We play about a dozen times a year, maybe.
Right on.
We have a gig coming up in Hopkins next week. And after that, there's this place a half a block from my house called the Warehouse Winery. And it's a winery and event center. And a friend of the drummer is getting married there. So
Oh, cool.
she's like, will you guys play? I'm like, it's like walking distance from my house. Sure, why not?
You mean stumbling distance?
Yeah, I can go to the end of my driveway and I can see
That's
the door
awesome.
of the place.
So you don't sing in the band. Are you
I'm
a guitar player?
Yeah.
Like lead,
So, I
rhythm,
I play
bass?
lead guitar mostly.
Lead guitar. Eddie Van Halen in the house.
Well, kind of.
What kind of music is it?
Oh, we play a wide variety. Let's see.
Oh,
We range as far as Chicken Fried, Iron Maiden, Duran Duran.
I like it. I'll
We'll
have to
play
check it out.
Ozzy. We play quite a bit of hard rock stuff.
Nice. Yeah.
So-
So my band's name was Skewed View, and I fronted that band, and I didn't play anything but a cowbell once in a while because everybody needs more cowbell.
We usually get the
Or a
girls to
shaker.
play. We
Get
usually
a
get the
shaker.
girls up to play cowbell.
Good move. Solid move, sir. That is a great
We bring
move.
extra cowbells.
Yeah, so we are recording. We are in the tavern in Blaine. So if you hear some background noise, that would be why. But I am here with the what is your official title?
I'm the president of the Twin Cities chapter of Muskies Inc. My name-
President.
Yeah, Jim Doyle. That's my second year as it, and I pretty much got pointed at. I was the
I was like,
secretary.
was there an election?
There is. Sometimes it's even one day of campaigning, but I was the secretary for 7 or 8 years, and they said, "You're it."
Is it a job that like people want, or is it more? I feel like it's one of those things like you enjoy doing it, you're passionate about it, but it's a lot of work that you don't. I don't think you get paid for it, right? This is a voluntary thing,
It's
right?
a totally volunteer organization. Yeah.
So it's more of like you said, you're it.
Yeah.
like okay.
So yeah, I was on the board for like 10 years before I had an officer position, and that meant you sort of help out with various events and things and help staff tournaments and fundraisers and outings and things like that, and then started doing the secretary job, taking notes for meetings and kind of keeping everything organized and tracked that way. And I said I did that for like 7 years, and then they said, your turn. So
I was a
Actually,
member. I was a member of Muskies Inc. way back when for a few years. when I used to be into musky fishing. I kind of got out of it and started focusing more on bass. But I still have a box full of lures and still got some rods, and I might even chase them Monday. I got a friend of mine coming into town. My buddy Jimmy from North Carolina. He's from here, but he lives in North Carolina. And so it's kind of up to him what he wants to. He kind of mentioned the last time I talked to him, like maybe chase some muskies. Well, yeah, we could do that. Definitely can do that.
Well, Mille Lacs the last week has been, because of the really late spring and the cold weather, all the rain, there's some huge fish caught last week. The fish were still in the shallows in Mille Lacs, which is pretty unusual. It's not unheard of, but it's pretty unusual. But so I think this last few days of hot weather might
troll for them.
You don't have to. You can go up there in the fall, but the big fish that are sort of out roaming around in the open there, the relatively few number that are there,
chasing the toolies.
There's been a couple of really big fish caught. So
now they're eating smallmouth bass.
Yeah, even the fish I got in the St. Croix 2 weeks ago was still all scarred up and from
spawning.
And the river was 54 degrees. It was still
I wouldn't even have thought about
really
fishing
cold.
the St. Croix just because water levels are so high.
Yeah, we caught the fish in 3 feet of water in the woods.
I was going to say, are you casting into the trees?
Yeah, there were no beaches. We were casting into the trees. And the fish came out of one of the areas that is a beach, but it was up in the trees behind that. And then, of course, and there's strong current pulling through all these trees, and then my buddy gets snagged with his favorite bait in the woods and says, "Can we go in and get that?" And I managed not to break the trolling motor.
Oh, very nice.
Or the
well
transducer. It was like, this is going to cost a lot of money. You're going to
this fish better. How big was it?
Yeah, it's 45. It's
nice.
Decent fish. I've fished a lot on the St. Croix and had a lot of misses. But
45 is my personal best. But again, I don't target them that much. I caught that one on Lake Alexander.
Oh, yeah.
By Brainerd, kind of, sort of, on the way to Brainerd. Anyways. Yeah, that was that day comes with an asterisk, and I bring it up to my wife, and she's never going to live this down. And if she listens to this particular podcast, she's already burying her head. She's like, I've already apologized. So she didn't know. We had just been dating relatively early in our relationship, and so they have a cabin up there, so we're coming back from the cabin. It was a Sunday night. I'm like, well, I want to hit this lake on the way out. And I'm fishing, and she's good to sport. She doesn't fish, but she's a good sport about just riding around and enjoying a day on the water, and we were doing that and trying a bunch of different stuff. Nothing was really happening, and I threw on a big buzz bait over some real kind of coontail, a little sloppier, and then this little 36-incher comes racing out of there and smashes the buzz bait. So I caught one. I was pretty happy about that. And I think 15 casts later, I hooked up to the 45-incher and I got it and coached her through the net job. She did a good job. Well, she did a little too good of a job because I was like, no, don't move it. I'll steer the fish into the net. You can move it a little bit because the first attempt at it, it missed the net by an inch. I'm like, you could have moved it just over. I just didn't want you to scoop. Just, but we managed to land it, and it was beautiful fish, really good markings on it, but it was I felt like I had put together a pattern, and it was only 5 o'clock. I was like, this is only going to get better as the sun goes down. But she's like, well, I want to get going. Let's beat that weekend traffic, and I'm like, but they're biting.
Last forever,
this doesn't, multiple fish days are rare. You don't know what – she's like, I just don't – I got to work tomorrow. And like I said, it was early in the relationship, so I acquiesced. And then so she regrets it because now she's heard the story enough times, and she's talked to other fishermen. And they're like, you did what? And I'm like, yeah, well,
Never leave biting fish.
Exactly. It's she's like, I didn't know. I'm like, well, you know now, and you've known for the last 20 years, whatever it's been, long time. Now it's more of a fun thing to just tease her about. But I was a little salty for a year after that one.
My dad lost one of the biggest fish I've ever hooked. We had it to the net 3 times, and he finally stuck the lure to the outside of the net bag, and I lost a 40-pound fish.
Oh, no.
And then later that day,
pounds,
it was a massive fish.
Lord.
Massive, massive fish. Wow. And a little while later, he hooked and lost an upper 40-inch fish, and I just laughed. Payback. Yeah, the net job can be the most easily the most exciting part of catching them. I mean, if you get it to the boat, it's a fire drill. They go round and round and round.
I really need to get my brother on one. He hasn't caught a muskie yet. I took his son, obviously my nephew, the first time he went muskie fishing, I took him on a White Bear Lake, and he catches a muskie. It was like, I think it was a 40-incher, right around there. Real skinny, though. I don't know. It didn't look very healthy. Midsummer fish, big head on it, but just super skinny.
Yeah.
Right off Ordway Bar there, which is not a secret spot, so I don't.
Well, those fish get caught a lot.
Not afraid to say, the spot on that lake, because it's no secret.
It's
a pretty obvious spot. Anyways, if you know how to read a lake map at all, you're gonna
it looks pretty obvious
there. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing with muskies. They don't get caught once. They get, on average, I think in town they estimate it's like 6 times that each one will get caught.
Wow.
And my first 2 50-inch muskies are the same fish on Lake Minnetonka.
Really?
I caught it was a Wisconsin strain stocked fish, very odd looking pattern from Minnetonka.
Okay, I was gonna say must have had some distinguishing
features. It was very obvious.
Features.
It had a scar and it was missing a fin. And I caught it when the season was open in 1999. It was still open in December. I caught it on the 2nd of December.
You were out there late. That must have been a warm fall.
It froze like 2 days later. I mean,
yeah.
We were breaking ice to get out of the boat launch, but casting a 10-inch jake on the milfoil weed line. Yeah, it was rough. It was windy. Caught it. Took some pictures. That was before I had digital camera. Let it go. Got the pictures developed. Ordered a mount. The next June, on Father's Day, I'm out with my buddy in his boat. They're on the same lure, of course. We're fishing the same place, and I catch this 50-inch fish again. And we took pictures of it. Let it go. I went to get them developed at ProX. Get them back, and it's like, this is the same fish.
That's crazy. Yeah, all you young kids listening, we actually had to wait to see what our pictures, if they turned out.
Drive to ProX.
Yeah, you had to
and wait an hour.
Bring them film or a disposable camera, and and you had to wait. There was no editing and none of that good stuff. It's like, it is what it is.
You got a bad picture?
You got a bad picture. It's a bad picture. You really had to pay attention to where the sun was. You weren't backlit and there was no shadows. And
so people are like, "Oh, you just took 2 pictures." I'm like, "Well, there's no leaves on the tree in this one. I'm in a different boat.
Yeah,
I'm wearing different clothes.
That's crazy.
But it's
that you
obviously the same fish.
That's unbelievable.
I've caught other fish out of Minnetonka that I know other people have caught before. One of the past presidents caught a fish that had you've seen some of these fish that have a kink in the middle of their back.
Sure.
And he caught one of those, and I caught it a couple of months later, and there's no question. It was in the same place.
Crazy.
It's like, well, obviously it was about it depended upon how you measured it. If you measured from the nose to the tail, or if you measured down the spine, it was 2 inches longer.
Well, you definitely go over the spine then.
It's like,
that's the move.
Right. It's 2 inches longer now. So, yeah, it's crazy. In the magazines and stuff, the durability of these fish, they get caught many, many times. I mean, they're hard to catch, obviously, but they do get caught more than once. It's not all that uncommon now to see in Muskie Magazine or Muskie Hunter the same fish. And then if you go way far north, say you go to Lac Seul or some of those really far northern lakes, those fish are growing really, really slow, and the people that go up there and concentrate on those lakes will tell you they catch the same fish over and over.
They start giving them names?
Basically, yeah.
Did you give yours a name?
Well, no, I didn't, because I didn't know I was going to catch it twice. But now I have a mount of it and both pictures.
That's pretty cool.
Sitting on the wall in my
story,
basement.
Man.
It's
That's
pretty cool.
Awesome.
So I learned catch and release was a good idea in muskie fishing.
For sure.
I was already a hardcore fly fisherman, trout fisherman. I went to school in La Crosse, and I actually have a degree in aquatic biology, so I'm a fish nerd. But I used to trout fish every day. And there were fish you'd catch over and over and over, half a dozen times in a row in the same spot, even on the same fly. And you're like, well, you take them out of this little creek, they're just not here anymore.
They're
so
not migrating.
Then when I see that in muskie fishing, when I kind of switched over, which is a pretty big change from little
you went to
8-inch brook trout to
muskie bait to
4-foot fish. But I learned that early on, and it's really a way to have a trophy fish for, in the metro especially, a durable trophy fish for everybody to have a shot at, because like the DNR has done a lot of work looking at northern populations, and there hadn't been a change in northern regulations since the 1930s, and it was keep as whatever size you want, that kind of thing, and they've shown that northerns are really susceptible to stunting, and once they do, all those little fish breed at smaller sizes, and you get what everybody now knows is typical northerns, which are 20, 22 inches, and they never get any bigger.
It's not right.
And they are so aggressive, they get caught as much as 10 times a year in a lake that gets fished a lot. So if they're kept at 2 feet, they're never going to get any bigger. And they had that, maybe you remember it, that experimental regulation on several lakes that previously had produced really nice northerns. And we had that on for 10 years, and those fish got bigger and bigger and bigger, and they had the regulation to have people keep smaller fish to reduce the numbers, and then the fish got big again. So the genetics are there, and the food is there that you can get that bigger size fish. And every angler survey I've ever seen the DNR do has always said people want a chance at a really big fish. They want a chance to catch a trophy fish once in a while. And it's just really hard to get that change through. And we had that change there, and it was showing distribution changes in the fish population, and then the regulations went back to pretty much the same for everybody, and they changed them a little bit, but according to at least the fisheries guys that were really looking at the northern population, the regulations didn't get moved far enough to really allow that to develop. So, I mean, I've caught.
Well, it's new now. I mean, it's pretty drastic now.
I've probably caught 150 40-inch muskies in Minnesota. I've never caught a 40-inch northern. And
I have.
I got a cabin on. I've caught several 39s, never a 40. I've seen a 4-foot northern in Cass Lake several years ago, followed up, and it was.
They get
what's
big,
with
man.
this great big green muskie with white dots on it?
Yeah,
right. So I've seen one. I've caught lots of them in Canada as soon as you go over the border, but the catch and keep on the smaller fish, it makes it really hard to find those bigger pike. I mean, there's a few places, but you got to know where to look to really have a good chance at them. So
go to Mille Lacs.
Yeah,
that lake's got big fish everywhere. That's where I got my 43-incher. I caught this winter. It does on walleye tackle. That was sporty.
It does. That was protected from spearing for many years too. Cass Lake and Mille Lacs were.
And they even amended the spearing regulations in Minnesota here.
Yeah,
too,
it's
so
statewide
now. You can only get.
It's statewide.
You got to get little ones before you can get a big one, or something like that.
They changed it to it's statewide. You can spear it, so there are no protected waters anymore. Cass Lake was protected. Mille Lacs was protected.
Right, but it's like
others.
I don't remember what the size structure, like of what you can spear.
Yeah, but you can't let them go once you.
I know, but I think that's why they said you can't spear a big one unless you spear 2 little ones, or it's something like that.
May be the
I
case.
can't remember.
It is a really effective way to get at the big fish. That's what's.
Well, they don't have to bite. They just gotta
swim by,
show up.
Yeah. So in the face of that, the muskie push on that was to get the size limit pushed to 54 for muskies, to say, okay, if you even think it's a muskie swimming under the hole, there's no way.
It's nowhere it's 54 inches.
Yeah.
Well, it could be, but.
Yeah, it's pretty unlikely.
But know your target. I mean, that's hunting too. I mean, you should, if you're like, oh, oops, I thought know what you're doing. Yeah. I mean, that's on you. Ignorance is not an excuse.
Yeah, the deer hunter that shoots a cow doesn't really.
Yeah, it's like, wow, that was a really big doe. Well, it's my horse, and it was paint, so.
Yeah.
I thought it was a piebald. Like, no. Sorry, you're still getting a ticket, and I'll take that gun, please, thanks.
Yeah.
It's.
So we've had. Muskies are obviously a somewhat controversial thing in the regulations and where they are. There's always discussion around it, but I think we're in a pretty decent spot as saying, the muskies can be the top predator. They can be a durable, long-lived top predator that actually helps the rest of the fish distribution. It helps serve that role as the top predator to keep the other fish populations in balance. They live in Minnesota. They are from here. They evolved with all the fish that live in the state. I mean, we've heard people calling them an invasive species recently.
I was just going to bring that up.
It's not possible that, I mean, they evolved with all the species. There's 152 species of fish in the state of Minnesota, from minnows on all the way up, and every one of them, including brook trout, coastal brook trout and Great Lakes, have evolved in the presence of muskies. They are the top predator for this mix of fish.
Right.
So, and, you know, it came up in reference to gull most recently. And if the dam on Gull Lake was not there,
they'd be in there.
That was a musky lake.
Yeah.
It was previously. There were fish caught into the 80s out of that lake, muskies caught out of there. And the river in that section of the state is some of the best river musky water in the country. And all they have to do is go up the Gull River, which is, 3 miles long, maybe?
It's not far. And that was, I mean, the people that listen to this program know I pick on walleye fishermen a lot. And it's tongue-in-cheek. I don't really have anything against them. It's funny. However, with that said, when you start bringing up muskies, some of these dyed-in-the-wool walleye guys get pretty heated. And unfortunately for them, their arguments just don't hold up. I mean, they're just not based in any sound science. Even if they're bringing up, the invasives, if they're, there was never muskies in this lake and blah, blah, blah. Well, that may or may not be true. But how are you fish for something? You fish for a species that is the most stocked species in the state. I mean, if the state wasn't stocking walleyes by the hundreds of thousands,
they're technically an invasive species in about half the lakes that they exist in
and they're
Minnesota.
Not breeding. There's a lot of lakes that are not
stocked there.
There's no natural breeding, and if you stop stocking, you would eventually stop catching walleyes in that lake. So you're
as long as that's
protecting
the
your
case.
own hobby.
Yeah.
And it's not a fear. It's just not a logical fear to have, because the argument I always like to say is, name me the 5 top walleye lakes in this state, and you're going to find they have something in common. They also have muskies in them.
Right. So as long as they'll stop fishing those, that's fine.
Right.
I have a cabin on Winnebagosh.
I mean,
if no one else fished walleyes there, I'd be perfectly
happy.
Great. There's there are muskies in it. I've had multiple muskie days fishing there. Lake of the Woods, it's off the table. Rainy Lake, off the table.
Vermilion.
Leech Cass, they're all Winnie and Cass are now connected. They took the dam out on Cass Lake, so it's going to be invaded by more muskies.
Mm-hmm.
If they actually.
I'm surprised they're not. So we have a cabin up on it, near Pillager, and it's on the Crow Wing River, and there's a dam there right in Pillager. But I'm still surprised. I have never seen a muskie in that river system.
So if you look
it's not that far. Distance as the crow flies on that river, it's real close to the Mississippi.
It's about 4 years ago, a kid caught a 58-incher there.
Oh, out of what's that, Lake Pleasant?
It's in the river.
Oh, in the river.
It's in the Brainerd Dispatch. This little 13-year-old kid.
Well, it was. It was from.
It was in the Crow Wing River. He was fishing
up to the first dam. I wonder maybe that would make sense. Yeah. But it's still
So they're
surprised they're not in there just because they used to be in there.
They used to be over there. Yeah, they may have been moving up and down the river from the Mississippi there.
And if they're in the Crow Wing at some point in time, then I think it's the Swan that dumps into it up by Motley, I think. So they would be in that one too. I mean, without the presence of dams.
Yeah.
I mean, but obviously we have dams, so that's.
I mean, they're at such a low level unless people are poking around for them. I've fished walleyes my whole life on Lake Winnebagosh since I was 4 years old, and one time we thought my mom may have hooked into a muskie. I'd never had one come up and bite anything off. I do know some people that have had that happen, but I mean, they're in there and they're at a very low density in that lake typically. I now know where to find them, but there still aren't very many because you can go 100 hours and not see a fish. Yeah. But you just don't see them there. But you go to other lakes and you see them coming up eating crappies and stuff when you go fishing on the Lake of the Woods or whatever. I hadn't seen it there, even though they're present. So it does happen.
There's 2 lakes that have, so Cabotogama allegedly doesn't have them in there.
But if you look at the water, it's connected to the Rainy River.
And I have, with my own eyes, seen one. Yeah. I was fishing for big pike, and I had one to follow up. And no, it wasn't a big pike. I know the difference. This was a giant, wide back, brown top to it, like almost no markings. Like this was not a pike. It had, when it turned from my bait, fork tail. Like this is not.
Yeah.
Like.
And that's coming all the way.
They're in there.
Yeah, there are lots of clear fish in the Lake of the Woods connected system.
And there might not be a lot. I mean,
but
super low density, but there was at least one, and he was huge, or she was huge. Then you go a little bit further south, and I was just talked about this lake, Pelican Lake in Orr. On the DNR site, it lists muskies.
Well, there's several Pelican Lakes. And a couple of them do have muskies.
Yeah, in Orr, though. The one in Orr,
really?
Closest town is Orr. I've never seen – we used to live up there, fish it every year. I have logged a lot of hours on this lake, and I have never seen one. I have never spoke to somebody, first person, who says, yes, I've caught one, or yes, I've seen one. All the stories are, my uncle knows a guy who trains dogs, and his neighbor's mailman said that he saw one. It's like, that's not
enough.
I'm not taking that.
No.
If I'm talking to you, and you tell me that you saw a muskie in there, I will believe you. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But, I mean, maybe they used to be in there. I mean, there is a small dam on that. But when the water's high, any fish can get up and over that dam. But that's a long trek. They'd have to take the Pelican River all the way into the Vermilion River. And that's a long way. There's many rapids. Not to say it's impossible, but highly unlikely. And there is a extremely high population of northern pike in that lake.
Yeah,
so it's really hard to get a foothold. I mean, they're getting chewed up like candy when one spawns out. So that'd be super tough for them to get established in there if they ever were in there. So they might have been. Again, maybe there was one time, and that's how it made it on the list. But
there's pictures at some of the resorts on Vermilion. That's a stocked lake now, but there's pictures of from resorts from the turn of the century where there's people holding up muskies. I mean, there's no question. It's a large muskie. So you just look at all that water downstream of Lake Vermilion all the way to the border and all the way to Lake of the Woods. You're like, well, they're there. They're there at some level.
You take man-made.
You look at snowbank
obstructions out of the way. It's like they're all connected.
Yeah, and the muskies
could be in any one of those lakes.
Muskie's a river fish. It migrates up and down rivers. That's just what it does.
Right.
So, if before there were dams, pretty much anything that's been connected to the main Mississippi River or the Rainy River would be likely spot where there's certainly were occurring at some point. I mean,
yeah,
it's just
sure.
that's just what they are.
I just try to ease the walleye fishermen's concerns. Like I don't think muskies are a huge concern, and they might actually help the lake if they're in there.
Yeah, in all the research that's been done, there's nothing to say they decimate a population. That's just not been. That's always the claim that they'll decimate the other.
So what was that
fish,
ridiculous bill that was proposed a while back?
Well, we get
Ottertail.
We get them every year. So there's. I won't go into it in detail here.
I'll go into detail because some people don't know it. I know there was something about how they were going to immediately stop stocking, take that money, and put it to walleye stocking.
There's a particular landowner on that lake who has a lot of money, and he spends a lot of money every year to try and get legislation to stop all stocking in that county. And they try a different way every year to sneak that regulation into some unrelated bill, some unrelated legislation, and try and sneak it through. So we have contacts at the Capitol, too, that try and keep an eye out for that stuff. But
it's just ridiculous.
It was the last one last year was not this past session, but the session before was basically the county was to take over all stocking regulation and control for the whole county. They tried to give it to the Chamber of Commerce or the county commissioner or something.
Lake Association.
Yeah,
or something stupid.
And it's like there's already a thing called the DNR that's their job. They actually have scientists and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Muskies Inc. has always tried to partner with the DNR to make logical decisions as far as what kind of fish are in the lake and what kind of food are in the lake, and spread opportunities around the state for people to catch muskies. Because face it, the fish in Pelican Lake and Orr are not a whole lot different than the fish in Lake Minnetonka. It's a panfish and bass lake.
Yeah.
They stock a bunch of walleyes in Tonka.
It sets up quite similar, actually.
It's not a you probably have some tulibies there. We don't have tulibies in
No,
town
no
here much.
tulibies in Lake. Nope, no, it's not deep enough.
You know, there's rumor that there's some in White Bear, but there's been that rumor. I don't believe it. But Sugar Lake up towards Annandale out there is the southernmost lake I know of that has tulibies in it, and there's this muskies.
That's pretty deep, though.
Yeah, it is. It's there's mostly deep water. Yep,
crystal clear water. In that
so,
lake.
but the forage in the city is a little bit different, but
Lake
Waconia
Pelican
grows.
and Minnetonka, now that I think about it, they set up
pretty similar. And it doesn't get quite as warm, but
and Pelican's not nearly as big as Tonka. I mean, Tonka's like a chain of lakes, really, if you look at it. But so Pelican would be like one of the bays of Minnetonka.
It's several thousand acres, isn't it?
It's a good-sized lake, but it's not as big as Minnetonka.
Yeah.
But it has there's only really 2 deep spots in the lake that get down to I think 38, maybe 40 is the deepest it gets.
So the west end of the lake.
Most of it is pretty shallow. The majority of that lake is 12 feet and under.
Yeah.
So a lot of weeds, a lot of rock, a lot of woods. I mean, it would be great Musky Lake, but I just don't think they're ever going to get established in there. They would just have a hard time. I mean, I've always heard, and I know I've repeated this, and as a fish nerd, as you said, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but so the muskies spawn in the same place as pike, same basic habitat, but they spawn later.
Yep.
Correct? So by the time they hatch out, the pike fry have already hatched out and start going to town on musky fry.
That is the challenge for them. And actually in the southern part of the state, the challenge for the muskies is actually the panfish. So the Wisconsin strain muskies spawn earlier than the Leech Lake does, and that's why they spawn much closer to the time the northerns do.
Okay.
That's why there's a lot more with Wisconsin strain lakes, northern Wisconsin. There's a lot more tiger muskies in a lot of those lakes because they spawn almost on top of each other. So you get
natural tigers.
So natural tigers in Minnesota are much more rare, and the Leech Lake strain tends to spawn out a little bit deeper and on some sort of scrub grass. Typically, there's still not a ton understood there. There's a lot of research done on where to fish spawn. Considering it took the DNR almost 10 years to finally find spawning muskies in Leech Lake, which is chock full of muskies.
Wow, yeah.
They finally went fishing for them in the spring to see where the fish were, and then that's when they discovered they're out a lot deeper than we thought. But in the stocked lakes, they kind of go through the motions. An odd thing is they basically go back to where they were put in the lake.
Oh, weird.
They'll go back to the boat launch or whatever.
Interesting.
There's at least a trend there.
It's weird how they know how.
Very odd that they. But you go to boat launches in the spring and
there they are.
And they're there.
Huh.
But I know people on Mille Lacs see them, tooling around under their docks and that kind of thing. Back in they're looking for warm water and they're going through the motions. We've actually had the guy for the University of Minnesota who does the genetics for lots of different strains of fish come and speak at a couple of our chapter meetings. It's fascinating.
Oh, you got to give me his contact information. I've been trying to get somebody from the U of M on this podcast. I think he's great.
He's an interesting guy. They look at, for Mille Lacs, for instance, they were, long before anybody knew was aware of this fantastic musky fishery, they were struggling to establish musky fisheries in the state. So in the 70s, they were using a strain of muskies called shoepack strain. There's a little tiny lake on the very northern edge of the boundary waters up near the border, and it's been isolated since the glaciers left, and it had muskies in it. And there's a very stunted strain of muskies in there. They don't ever get over maybe 40 to 42 inches. Never. In fact, most of them never get that big. And that was the first place they had an easy place to get muskies. So they stocked them all over the place. They put them in Minnetonka. They put them in Mille Lacs. They put them back in the 70s. They put them in. I have the stocking data for muskies that goes all the way back to when they first started in 71. And they put those things all over the place, and nobody ever caught any big fish. And they couldn't understand it in the lakes they stocked. So they knew they had this stunting problem after years, and they were trying to get Leech Lake strain fish. And they tried and tried. They put nets out, and they never got any because they were sort of assuming they must behave like go back in the shallows.
Shoepack, yeah.
till they went actually fishing and then started seeing fish out much deeper. Then they figured out that they're spawning in slight different places. So then they started being successful netting, and that's where they got the Leech Lake strain stock. And then they've got several lakes around the state that they, Rebecca in the cities, and there's a couple other ones they use around the state to collect fry. And they actually, I think it's every other year, every 3 years, they go to Leech Lake and get some more fresh genetics and mix it in there to keep things.
Are they taking growing. Any from Mille Lacs? I mean, because they just seem to get so big in that
No,
lake.
well, Mille Lacs is interesting because the genetics there are a broad range of things, and there's some people have some ideas. So there's shoepack strain in there. There's a strain of fish that the DNR and the basically the researchers refer to as the Iowa strain. Iowa in the 60s, I think, 50s or 60s, got genetics and fish, fry, from a hatchery in Wisconsin, and that strain of fish is genetically distinct from anything else they can't figure out where it came from. So they just call it the Iowa genetics, and they use that strain there. And Minnesota got some of that, and there's some of that still present. There's shoepack and that Iowa strain. They still see it in Mille Lacs to some degree. So those fish haven't been stocked in 20, 30 years. There's still some of that trace of genetics in some of the fish they get material from. So they, at some level, there was something hanging on there for many years, and then they finally got the leech fish and in the late 80s, early 90s, and then finally started stocking Leech Lake
And I got to assume with the advancements in like DNA research and technology that we have now, like they can map
crazy.
This stuff out. Like it's just unbelievable what
they have learned
know.
So much so quickly, actually. So there's the theory that the really big fish out of Mille Lacs are either Wisconsin and Leech mix, or they're a mix of these genetics, the Iowa and Wisconsin. So there are some fish that are not pure strain of what was stocked there. So obviously there's a little bit of mixing and some reproduction. Of all the stocked waters, the only one I would say that really does a good job of reproducing for sure is the St. Louis River. So that was a native musky water with Great Lakes strain fish in it, or Wisconsin strain. They don't really know. And then with all the industrial development on the Duluth side, that killed off most of the spawning habitat, and muskies were extirpated, as were the sturgeon. So now both of those have been reestablished, and the genetics of the fish in that river are 1/3 Wisconsin, 1/3 leech, and 1/3 mix. So they're really going back and forth. In fact, we've been supporting a research effort on behavior. So they have buoys all up and down the river and out in the Great Lakes, and they have been putting transmitters in fish to find out where are they using spawning habitat, where are they spending their time, what are they doing, do they go out in the lake or not. The Wisconsin fish almost never leave the river. The mixed fish will occasionally go out past Duluth and out in front of the harbor there. And some of the leech fish go way out and then come back. In fact, one of them went all the way to Schwamigan Bay.
Wow.
And they track it on the sensors out in the lake that are out there for salmon and trout and whatever.
Sure.
They'll sit there tracking, and they found one that went all the way over to Schwamigan. Now, there's 2 or 3 rivers in northern Wisconsin that dump in that are musky, Wisconsin strain musky, natural musky water in those rivers. So nobody's sure what were was this Wisconsin river strain that was in there, but the leech fish actually go out in the lake and come back. A lot of them, they'll go out and come back in. So they have a little bit different behaviors. Yeah. And the trout are coming in and out of the river there, too, at the mouth, for sure. I mean, that's world-class lake trout fishing right in front of it there. Yeah. So in the winter. And
that's good high oil, protein rich.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the potential for food source for those fish is, well, did you ever see that tiger that was caught there in the river, probably 10 years ago? It was absolute monstrous fish.
That.
Probably a 26, 28-inch girth tiger muskie.
I need to get a tiger yet. I haven't caught one. I've been meaning to, just target them, and I just
caught a few little ones.
So many irons in the fire. They're just such a cool looking fish.
Oh, yeah, they're beautiful. Man. Beautiful fish.
They're gorgeous.
Very cool looking fish.
They're better looking than either of their parents, I think.
Yeah, you know exactly when.
Unbelievable.
I raised one once out on Lake Calhoun late in the year. It was either end of November or December, and it was water. You could see the bottom in 25 feet. The water's super clear. and it's dead flat calm day, and that thing swam up, and it looked like it had lights in it. It was it was probably 47, 48 inches, and it was just stunning looking.
Big fish, man.
It was just, I mean, it looked electric in the water. They're just a beautiful, beautiful fish.
Oh, they're gorgeous.
I've never caught one over about 40.
A couple times I targeted them, and I think Clear Lake and Forest, near Forest Lake has tigers in it, I'm pretty sure.
Didn't Rush as well up there?
Does Russia? I think Russia has regular muskies, too.
It was a tiger lake at one time, I think. There's probably both.
I think, okay. Maybe
They've phased out some of the tiger lakes, and they haven't replaced those with, some of them they have replaced those with regular muskies. Calhoun was kind of a mix for a long time, and they've basically just been putting regular muskies in it. I've caught the biggest fish I've ever seen. The biggest fish I've ever hooked was in Lake Calhoun.
I've heard it's really good. It's just
it was probably
for
50.
Me. It's like I think about fishing it, and I'm like, I'm driving my boat. And
I've had my car broken into, and
I've heard just horror stories down there. It's I just don't think it's worth it. And there's no motors, right? It's just electric
only,
motor.
But it is a lake chain. You can go into Lake of the Isles and then into Cedar Lake. So
sure,
you can get in there. It's a lot of, you use all your electric motor running the whole thing. But I've caught 50-inch fish in there, and
I've heard there's big ones.
I lost a 56-inch fish in there. I know somebody that caught.
Lord.
And we hooked this fish, lost it right at the boat side, caught a 47-inch fish about 15 minutes later, and went, wow, that's a puny little fish here.
So I got a two-part question. So Minnesota's starting to do catch and release records. Do they have one for muskies?
Yep. I mean, there's been numerous fish caught over the state record out of Winnie, 54 pounds. It's been broken many times on Mille Lacs, and I know two or three people that have broken.
That's what I mean. They have the.
Yep, they established that last year or the year before.
Yeah, they just started. It's pretty new, and they only have a few species.
Because the sturgeon is that one that was caught last winter on St. Croix there, and it's like, well, somebody will beat that.
Yeah, somebody will beat that for sure.
It's a 72-inch sturgeon or whatever, but those are not
somebody
that.
Beat that. Well, like the record, the weight record was out of the Kettle River for sturgeon, and set back on it forever.
Those are the guys that got.
And you can't. I don't think you can even legally fish sturgeon on the Kettle River.
No, remember the
only open season I think is on Rainy, right?
The St. Croix now has a season.
Does actually have, because I know a lot of people that fished for sturgeon when there was never every spring they'd go fish. But how do you prove you're fishing for sturgeon? You're just clump of worm on the ground. You catch more sheephead and catfish than you do anything else. But you will catch a sturgeon.
So the St. Croix does have a season now. I think it's late summer.
Okay.
And sometime in the fairly near future, the fish are apparently getting big enough in the St. Louis that's going to open up too. I mean, the people that fish there say they see large sturgeon jumping behind their boats pretty routinely.
Well, I know this isn't part of the musky conversation, but I always found it odd that Winnebago and Wisconsin has a spearing season.
Yeah.
That's giants out there.
That's really interesting story, though.
And then
the history on that is fascinating.
Yeah, it is, and I worked with a guy that spears out there, and he kind of filled me. I was like, that is really interesting how they got they recovered that lake of the population to where they can have this season on it. But
it was the fishermen that do it.
Yes, it absolutely was, and it's just interesting to me casually how we're so restrictive on Rainy, and then over in Wisconsin, chucking spears at them.
Yeah, but it's a draw for a chance to spear, right?
Yeah,
it's very limited. It's very
limited. It's very limited.
I mean, they learned it was in the early 1900s that they speared it out.
Hardcore to do that, because it's funny how they'll use decoys, but they're not a predatory fish, so they're like
curiosity.
Yeah, and so the guy who does every year, I go, do you think it works? He's like, I think it works to keep you engaged, because if you don't have anything in the water,
you're just staring at a blank hole.
Know you're just you're just it's all chance.
Yeah.
At least if you put something in the water, maybe they're attracted to it, maybe not, but at least there's a maybe involved.
Right.
If you don't put anything in the water, you literally are just chancing it.
Yeah, waiting for something huge to swim under.
I mean, I like to think I have a lot of patience as being a fisherman, but I do not have that kind of patience.
The chance at a 300 or 400 pound fish is just it's just crazy. I saw that story published in the Star Tribune years ago, and it was just fascinating. It was amazing that as long ago as it happened, because it was in like the 19 teens that they were really spearing, and what they were doing, a lot of it was, so those huge sturgeon swim up really, really small rivers. That's what happened in the Kettle River. They swim up into the shallow water. You can literally walk in, grab them, and drag them out of the river.
Yeah, easy.
And so they got over-harvested like crazy, and all of a sudden everybody went, where'd all the fish go? And they realized, because it was such a direct thing, that, okay, we have to protect these things when they're in here.
Lock this
and
down.
then we really got to, and that was I think it was in the 50s, they started really, really limited spearing, and it's been stable and steady ever since. That you can sit there and stare forever.
They
but
take
you get
a long time to mature before they even spawn. And
that's why they've had the St. Louis has been closed so long.
Man.
Yeah,
I mean they're
it's
freshwater sharks with no teeth.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's like 20 years before they get to spawning size.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's really quite a fascinating animal. But to touch on, to bring it back into muskies, like the fishermen brought the sturgeon back, and it's groups like Muskies Inc. and just the Muskies anglers that kind of started pitching. They were doing a catch and release before. They were kind of self-monitoring.
Yeah.
I mean, they just weren't keeping fish.
Oh, in our old newsletters, there's recipes for cooked muskies.
Sure, I remember. Yeah, well, I remember when the minimum size limit was 38, I think, at one point in time, and then it went to 40, and then kept bumping. Then some lakes
went to 48.
Got 48, and then some went to 50.
Yeah, and now we're 54 statewide,
which is great. But it's almost like, is it even required? Because most people aren't keeping those fish anyways.
True. Well, like I said before, the reason we pushed to the 54, we wanted it, but it was in a trade-off for the northern pike spearers to want to be able to spear on all the lakes.
I think that's important for people to understand.
They wanted access to the lakes that have been protected. Like I said, I saw a 4-foot northern in Cass Lake. I've been to some places in northern Canada and seen big fish. Yeah. Nothing as big as that.
Yeah.
And no surprise, once those regulations got pulled off the handful of lakes that were protected, they all went to spear on those lakes. And it's really easy to overspear the large predator northern population. Yeah. So, in a trade-off, muskies in the lakes that they're in can serve that role as the large predator. They can get caught over and over, and they just kind of stay there for 20 years until they
it would be nice to see the spearfish community kind of regulate themselves like other angling groups.
I mean, I get it. They want to get a big
trout
fish.
Anglers have done it. Bass anglers have done it. And you can go back. You go back in the 70s, and there's pictures of Al Linder with stringers of giant bass. I mean, that was the mentality way back when. Is you caught a fish, you kept it, you ate it. That's just what you did. And then it was, as fishing got more popular, and people started seeing like, hey, if we let these big fish go, they're going to get even bigger, and there'll be more of them, which is more fun. And
I mean,
the point I was trying to make is that like the anglers are the ones making these lakes better for everybody. This isn't a politician somewhere. This isn't an animal rights group that is helping. These are the people that are interested in it, and that goes across the board for hunting too. I mean, it's the hunters that brought back elk and whitetail populations in this country when back in market hunting days, turn of the century, when there was no game anywhere.
Yeah.
And now bison populations are being established right here in Minnesota. Yep. Like I live in Stacy, and just a few miles to my west, Cedar Creek Reserve, I think it's called. They're gonna
put bison there.
They're gonna put bison there.
They don't like fences. I can tell you that.
Yeah, they're not big fans of fences. So it's like once you have them, they're kind of go where they want.
Yeah.
But I'm fine with it. I mean, I think it's pretty cool. You can drive down the road and see might cause some traffic problems.
They're as big as your car.
If you think hitting a deer is bad.
Yeah, I drove by.
It can't be any worse than hitting a moose.
I used to have a Dodge Dakota, and we were out. My in-laws live in the Black Hills, and we're driving around, and my Dakota was about the size of the bison that was walking down the side of the road next to us. It's like, boy, that's a big critter.
And they just look at you like you're an annoyance.
Yeah. People get out. People get out to take a picture.
Jesus.
Like, that thing's actually looking at you, and it doesn't look happy. So.
Darwinism in action right there. But
yeah,
I don't know. So I just think it's a credit to musky anglers how they kind of took the reins and they've made it. I mean, Minnesota, I think, is definitely a destination.
Yeah, it's drawn a lot of people in. I can say that looking at the angler surveys the DNR did, where they ask you what do you fish for, in the mid to late 80s, it was less than 2% of people were ever targeting muskies in the surveys, and it's around 20% now. I mean, that's a massive increase, considering the overall number of people that fish has not been going up at all. There's one segment that's been growing, steadily. We have tomorrow, actually, is the state or the regional qualifier for the state high school muskie tournament. 10 years ago, we established our old president, Tom Keith, was a school principal, and he had good contacts at lots of different schools, and he started a regional, just in the metro, muskie tournament. And it was just a one-day deal, and the kids fish, and you can have somebody else run the boat for you, but you got to pick your spots. They'll give a little advice on here's the kind of places to look, whatever. We have 17, well, it was going to be 18, but some kids in a baseball tournament. 17 teams from the metro alone that fish tomorrow on Waconia. And then the state championship is on Vermilion this year. I think it's Vermilion. It's either in Vermilion or Mantrap. And a kid won that last year from the metro. He got two muskies and two casts on Vermilion. Like, no one's done that.
You're right.
You can pretty much quit now. You got like a 42 and a 45. It's like you're done in a 7-hour tournament. So pretty crazy. So we got a lot of teams. In fact, it's statewide here now, and Wisconsin has started one as well. So it's grown like crazy in 10 years. We went from, I think we had 3 teams, the first in the metro, and it was, we were kind of putting it together in the spring. We had 7 or 8 teams for several years, and we're up to, double or triple that now.
That's pretty cool. I didn't even know there was a high school muskie teams. I know there's some bass teams out there, but I had no idea. Well, that's pretty cool.
It's kind of tough. You got to do it right away at the end of the season.
Yeah, I was going to say, if somebody wants to get in on that, if somebody listened to it, has kids, or if the kids listen to it, how do they get?
They just go to the Twin Cities Muskies Inc. website. There's links there to get stuff. They're going to miss it because it's tomorrow morning.
Well, sure, but it's but I mean for next year.
Yep. So it's if your school has any fishing stuff, if you get a hold of somebody with the Twin Cities chapter of Muskies Inc., if you just go on the website and pretty much call anybody. Unfortunately, our youth guy who's running it this year is just retired, and he's moving back to Wisconsin to fish muskies and hunt deer. But can't blame him for that.
No.
We've got it's now not just our chapter; it goes all across the state. So it's pretty neat.
Pretty awesome.
Pretty neat deal. We got a ton of stuff going on right now. We've got. I brought the newsletter because I knew I wouldn't remember it all.
Yeah, I know I wouldn't.
So we have the high school tournament. We have we support a Capable Partners outing. That's coming up June 9th, so it's coming up on Sunday out on Minnetonka. Paul Hartman runs that. He's not on the board anymore, but he's a long-time huge muskie sporter, runs a metro-wide tournament this weekend, and he runs that on Sunday, the Capable Partners outing. We do great. A couple of we support an Armed Forces family fishing outing. That's coming up, like I said, everything's coming up now, June 13th. I think that's a Thursday on Minnetonka. That families can bring, if they're a military veteran or in the service. We actually started supporting this for people that were deployed for their spouse to bring the kids and take them out fishing.
Oh, that's great.
And they fish not just for muskies. They can go out and say, we want to go catch sunfish or bass or go for walleyes or whatever. And then there's the high school muskie tournament there. And then our chapter has a challenge there's 2 muskie metro chapters of Muskies Inc. in the metro. There's North Metro and the Twin Cities chapter. And we have a little challenge coming up.
Who's better?
Well, we're older. We're chapter number 1. We're the founding chapter.
More experience.
That's right. We have more people, but they usually win this thing. So, we got a ton of stuff coming up right now. And we just finished. We have a couple of really cool events in the spring. This one on the front of the newsletter here is we do an activity on the weekend before Minnesota Walleye Opener. So it's actually Wisconsin Walleye Opener at the Vets Home in Minneapolis, down in Minnehaha Park. We get a trout pond down there, and we fill that up with trout.
Kids
and they bring out the vets that live there. So these are, there's World War II vets there. There's Korean War vets and Vietnam vets and even younger guys. That place has expanded dramatically. But we just did our 33rd year of doing we call it the Vets Home Opener. And we give them hats. We fry up the fish. We cook up potatoes. We have shore lunch for them. And we feed like 500 people, and they all get their chance to fish. And they'll catch two or three people, we'll get hit in the
Tooth
face with a
fish,
fish. It's usually good. But we have like 30, 40 people from the chapter that go down and put this on. We get donations from some of the VFWs and things and different sponsors around the city, and we put that on. We've been doing it, like I said, 33 years. It's a cool event.
That's great. That's really good.
And so we do a lot of different stuff other than just, it's not really just a fishing club. We're really into supporting fishery production, research, that kind of thing. We have one of the early members and founders was a guy named Hugh Becker in Muskies Inc. And he's been dead for quite some time now, but he was a very frugal guy. He saved a lot of money, and he set up a trust that gives out grants for youth activities, fisheries activities, and research. That grant gives out $100,000 a year in $10,000 increments for anybody that applies. They get considered by the board, and they give out grants for everything. And this is across the country. Maybe close to half of that money ends up going in Minnesota and Wisconsin, but we do things like Lake Simcoe is a lake it's a lot like Lake Sinclair. It's connected to the Great Lakes, very close. It's connected to, I think, Georgian Bay. It used to be a tremendous muskie fishery, and the muskies were extirpated many, many years ago. And they have been doing research and trying to reestablish a fishery there for years. Like I said, it's not easy to get muskies to breed somewhere.
Yeah.
But we support that. These tracking studies in the St. Croix River and the St. Louis River and various lakes. Man Trap Lake, we did a tracking study that we supported. That the Hugh Becker thing supported
that stuff fascinates
a deal there.
me.
It's all kinds of genetics research and fishery support. We've done grants. We've written grants, and they've been accepted by the board to improve the fish feeders at various hatcheries. In fact, not too long ago, we did a fishery. We were looking to upgrade the feeders where they're feeding the fry in the raceways and the hatchery, and that stuff actually got used to help recover the walleyes in Mille Lacs.
Really?
We donated it to them. They said, "Do you mind if we use this?" The governor at the time said, "We need to do something," and they said, "You need to raise walleyes here, not whatever else." So we let them use the feeders for
nice.
recovering those.
Yeah, see, walleye guys, we're all on the same team.
Probably one of the most tying into that genetics discussion before on the feeder thing. Back when Red Lake crashed, the walleye population crashed there. They took my walleyes out of Lake Winnebagoche.
Your walleyes.
Because everybody else is my lake, right? Well, it's my lake.
Right.
No, there are lakes. They're everybody's lakes. But anyway, Winnie has always been one of the places. It's super easy to collect fish there. The Narrows and Cutfoot is just laughably easy to net walleyes. So they net them there, and they were stocking Red Lake. Well, that was about the time they started to have the ability to look at genetics of the walleyes on a lake-by-lake basis. So they could say, that's a walleye out of this lake or that lake. And they kept stocking Winnie walleyes into Red Lake to get it to recover, and it took 12 to 15 years to recover. There are no genetics of Winnie fish in Red Lake.
Really?
It recovered all on its own. So when leech...
So it was basically a put-and-take fishery when you were stocking it with Winnie walleyes.
The Winnie walleyes were not as well suited. They're a very, very similar lake. They're literally miles apart. I mean, just a handful of miles.
Yeah.
You drive north of Winnie, it's 20 minutes to Red Lake. So when leech crashed, when the cormorants really did a number on that lake, they learned that they need to use genetics out of that lake to recover that population. They recovered it in 6 years.
I do remember reading something about it, how now they're really looking at genetics when it comes to stocking lakes just in general. Like they're picking the strains that will do well, in that type of watershed.
Yeah.
If it's similar.
So if Mille Lacs needs help, you better get Mille Lacs fish, not just here's some more walleyes and toss them in.
There.
You just don't have they won't last in the lake most likely. It's not that they don't, but they just
I wonder what
they're not
are
as
they
well
are they
suited.
starting to figure out what the parameters are? Like what drives that? Is it like a
They're just the genetics that are
pH?
most suited.
I mean, like what's the trigger? Is it a pH thing? Is
I
it
don't
just
think they
a
know.
genetic memory of where to spawn, when to spawn?
It's probably a number of those factors.
Multiple factors, maybe. Yeah.
It's probably a number of those factors. We the Hugh Becker thing supported a international Musky Symposium just a couple of years ago where we get researchers from all across the country and Canada to come and present. And there were, like I said, in Minnesota, I can only think of the St. Louis River, which already had muskies in it. And there's a little bit of breeding going on in these other lakes, but it's not enough to support, to really establish and flesh out a fishery. Interestingly, down in Virginia, so the muskies, a lot of people don't know this, but they're native up the Ohio River Valley, up into Tennessee and the hills in Virginia and that kind of thing.
I was going to bring that up. I know somebody that they just did a tournament here. Well, not just, actually, it's been a few weeks now, but in Tennessee.
Yep.
It was a fly fishing only tournament, actually.
Yep. And there you're fishing those reservoirs and stuff. And
those
are other states do get Leech Lake strain fish. They seem to do well in a lot of places, but there's their own strain of fish all the way up the Ohio River Valley. And some of the presentations for some of those reservoirs, they just tossed fish in, and lo and behold, they took hold and they breed like crazy.
Wow.
And it's like, here's these guys from the Great Lakes and some of the Canadian side stuff. They're like, we can never get these things to reestablish.
Yeah, right.
So there's every once in a while there's a place where they seem to be able to get a grip. But
there's got to be something to it.
They
just got to put the puzzle together. Someone's going to stumble on the.
I know they're extremely specific on where they spawn. So there was a huge problem in Lake Sinclair with VHS about 15 years ago now.
Yeah, and you don't really hear about that much anymore.
No, well, it's really interesting. At that point, they were already site-specific tracking fish on where they spawn. And they spawn in the deltas of the rivers that run in and out of the lake. So like downtown Detroit, and then across the lake on the other delta where the water's coming in there, whatever. But the main river deltas is the spawning habitat. And they were down to areas the size of a table that they know this fish spawns here. And they were tracking these fish. Well, when VHS came through, it wiped out the numbers of fish in the lake. And they were going back to these places where these fish had been spawning, and they were seeing no fish there. But the fishery started to recover, and it continued, and it's every bit as good today as it was before that. And there's still no fish using those spots. So the strains of the genetics that survived were using different spawning areas, and they still do. But nobody has moved into those other spots. And there was some other research presented at that symposium from Georgian Bay, where lake level changes, and Georgian Bay has it's come way up now, but it was really low for a while. And there were fish that they had been spawning in the same spot on some rock ledge, and the water dropped a foot, and the fish wouldn't go in there, and it wouldn't go 6 feet down the shore and
just didn't spawn.
Nope, it's like, oh well.
Oh,
so they're just
out.
that goofy in their behavior.
Yeah,
so
I wonder, has there been any thought to, when they're stocking a lake, where they stock it? Because you brought up where they'll come back to the boat launch.
Yep.
Just out of habit or where they go. Like, would it make more sense to
move them to areas and set them in?
Into historic spawning sites
or
around the lake. So you're not just dumping them in one spot, like dump 1,000 here and then go to the other spawning bay and dump 1,000 over there and see if maybe that would help.
It helps. We had that exact thought that, we could get fishermen to show up when they're going to stock fish and bring them to certain parts of the lake. Okay, this is a shallow, weedy area that looks like a likely spot in a lake that wasn't a musky lake before or something, and see if we can get them away from the panfish that are going to chow them when they're or something. So we've had that idea. One of the problems comes is transporting fish around the lake in your boat like that is it's basically against the state regs.
Right. Well, I mean,
it'd be an exception.
Maybe that's where the DNR has to get involved and either give permits.
Well, no, I'm saying the DNR, just the rules for you and me to carry those fish around is
right. Well, I mean, even the DNR. Why can't I don't know the DNR? They have boats. Why don't they do it? They just got to drop them off at different spots.
Yeah. To try and
or they could. I think it wouldn't be that hard to set up a volunteer program. Right. We're gonna be stocking muskies
on this
date. We need volunteer boats.
Yeah.
And so you're there. They inspect your boat for invasive species, make sure everything's clean, your live well's clean, this, that, and like.
Now you'd have to carry them in the hatchery water until you got to the spot.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'll think they're at the boat launch.
Well, that is true. So you're going to have a bucket, I guess, or however, a cooler,
and just
however
you're
going to do that and go straight there. And I think it would be relatively easy. It's like you're going to go, here's the spot on the map, you're going to do this
go
one.
To that bay or
Ed, you're going to go over there.
Or whatever. Yeah,
Bob, you're going to go over there.
Yep.
Janet, you're going to go over there. Like just I
Spread 'em around.
think it could be done pretty easily, and I don't think you'd have any problem filling those volunteer spots. I think you'd have a waiting list of people to do that.
We get people that sometimes they'll ask us if they need help in the spring in collecting eggs and stuff, and we get people that are – there's a lot of retired guys that have time that can go on a moment's notice to go out to whatever lake. And
I'd love to do that sometime. I should look into that.
Yeah,
they're just really interesting to see.
They're pretty open to that kind of to help on that kind of stuff, because some years – this year was very easy for them to get eggs apparently. Some years they're having to chase up and down the state to different lakes because depending upon how it goes, they'll miss the spawn in one place or another. And a couple of years ago, they were up at Plantagenet getting eggs. It's not one of their normal places they get them, and they were chasing north trying to get fish. They're going either into Itasca State Park. There's Elk Lake there. They use that routinely, but it's you're really you got to be spot on to get them, and sometimes they're chasing around, and we've offered we'll pay your hotel rooms if you just We'll try and help you make sure you get
that's pretty
get your quota to support them. So we do all sorts of levels of support with them and work with them. So
there's a few lakes I know in Wisconsin that have like only muskies in them. Like there's no pike in those lakes.
Yep.
And what I find interesting about those lakes is that the muskies fill that northern pike roll. So you'll go there and you'll catch a bunch of hammer handle muskies.
Yep. Well, that Shoepack
so
Lake.
You just want to cross muskies off your list. You're not concerned about the size. Find one of those lakes and hit it up.
I did see a few years ago in the Volunteer, the Minnesota DNR Volunteer magazine, and it was on Shoepack muskies, and there were some guys up there fly fishing muskies, and they catch a ton. There's a lot of them, but they're all small.
Yeah, they're just not big. Yeah.
They're much different looking, very green. They almost look like a Wisconsin strain fish. Very, very green, kind of bars, no spots. Very different looking strain of muskie.
I have yet to catch a spotted muskie. Mine have all been the barred variety.
Yeah.
In the different lakes that I've caught them in.
Boy, Lake of the Woods, you never know what you're gonna catch. I've caught stuff that has patterns I've never seen before.
And leech is primarily spotted muskies.
Yeah,
right?
They're very spotted, and when they're stocked in different lakes, they take on different coloration. A lot of them around the metro, although they're getting very, very dark now that Minnetonka is really clear and that kind of thing. They're kind of clear, and they have some spots on the lower half towards the back of the tail is pretty standard, but I've caught plain cream-colored ones, plain green-colored ones with some bars to them. One Wisconsin strain fish. There were only of that Wisconsin strain muskie, the 50 I caught twice. It was only a couple hundred were put in 1986. So a very
first
very
legal
low
muskie was on White Bear Lake, and that was a barred muskie.
Yeah, there's in Bald Eagle there, that's pretty much all Wisconsin strain, or at one time it was only Wisconsin strain there, and it was a mix in White Bear for a long time. So there's a little bit of both there.
A little bit of mix of genetics going on in the old White Bear.
St. Croix, same way. It's both got
Bald Eagles is really clear water now, and that used to be
zebra mussels.
It used to be green.
Winnebagosh has gotten super clear. It's named after being dirty water. Yeah, Winnebagosh was 3-foot water depth. You can see now. You can see the bottom.
That's a little bit of a controversy too. The zebra mussels. People hate them, but boy, it sure seems like lakes that have them are clear fisheries.
I'm not as good at clear water musky fisherman though.
I don't know that's really hurting it that much. Not saying we should be stocking zebra mussels, but
no,
we seem to be crying the sky is falling, and I haven't yet seen the sky fall. I
think it does a number on the plankton and stuff that feeds the bottom end of the food chain, and it's been different in different types of water.
What seems to be happening, and I could be completely talking my ass with this, but what seems to be happening is that when they get into a new waterway, it's like a new buffet opens up and the population explodes, but then they kind of eat themselves out of house and home, and then there's a massive die-off, and then they're always there, but they're
I'd love to see of all the lakes that they've been tracking. Problem. Yeah, I'd love to see a Secchi discs reading on the lakes that have got them, that got super clear. Did they stay that way?
Yeah, I was surprised. I was actually surprised at Mille Lacs. They got such a good hold on Mille Lacs because it's always been a pretty clean lake.
Yeah.
When I first heard that they were discovered there, I'm like, that lake will be fine. It's always there can't be that much food for them, and they just blew up.
Yeah,
on that lake.
It's amazing once you look at the. Like Lake Erie, you look at what they expected.
They single-handedly cleaned up that lake pretty much.
The turn rate, the amount of water going through zebra mussels, it's like most of the water in the lake in a year is going through. It's just you think a lake that big, it's just crazy.
It's unbelievable.
So
they're very efficient.
You look
good
at
at what they do.
You look at the plankton and the small stuff that other things are supposed to be eaten, and what does it do to that balance?
Yeah.
It becomes a clear water lake. It's not that there weren't, say, smallmouth and walleyes and other things in super clear water lakes before, but it's not those particular fish. I don't think there's enough factors there that they sort of take a we'll see what happens kind of approach to it, and I get that. Yeah, certainly I'm no fan of moving around.
No, I mean, everybody does their part, but it also seems when it comes to invasives is that no matter how much we crack down on it and how much individual boat owners are trying to clean everything up, they still get they seem to still be spreading.
Yeah,
and I think it's just going to happen. I mean, it's do they belong there? No, but nature isn't static either. I mean, I was in college in the early 90s in one of my fishery classes, and one woman in the class, her husband discovered the first zebra mussels in the Mississippi in La Crosse. And all I could think of was, I wonder how long it'll take before they get to the cities. And it took a long time to go, not all that far. I mean, they've only been in Minnetonka a few years, probably 6 years, 7 years maybe. So it took 25 to 30 years for them to get that far up and then spread across town. They got in. I'm surprised they got in. Well, Winnie got them. I'm kind of surprised Winnie got them, except so much traffic comes from over towards Duluth. And they've been dragged into the mine pits and other recreational lakes there. And people drive back and forth. It's a fairly short drive there. And they've actually watched the genetics. They are almost positive that the mussels that got there didn't go up the Mississippi. They got dragged over from the Great Lakes,
from Duluth or somewhere over there. It's really hard to. I mean, the only people they've kind of caught doing it are people moving docks. You know, somebody docked to the guy who lives on the lake next door. They'll pull it out. It's full of them, and they wheel it into the next one.
Put it right into the lake without drying it.
That's the only people they've caught, but it's far less likely you're going to catch, the larva or the little tiny pieces of stone that they feel like when they're, in early summer. They move around like a piece of gravel in your live well kind of thing. I just wish when that stuff was discovered and people saw things were moving around, that the boat manufacturers would have taken it seriously. It takes nothing but make just a dead bottom drain on every boat. Just instead of the boat drain being an inch up off the bottom of the boat, put the drain on the bottom.
Yeah,
that's the minor design change. And live wells always drain out. Use smooth tubes instead of corrugated tubes. And just everything, you just take the plugs out and it's empty and it'll be dry in a day. And you would eliminate an awful lot of that. But there's so many bilges, and you look at some of these wake boats and stuff with these chambers in them to fill up with water to make bigger waves, to to surf and whatever. And those don't. Those
anyways. Oh, they really get in the way when I'm trying to work a shoreline.
Minnetonka was no wake last weekend, and there was still one of those driving around.
Yeah.
And it's like, where are these 2-foot rollers coming from at 6 o'clock in the morning?
Well, I'll tell you, the St. Croix, just with the yacht traffic, even when they're going relatively slow, can make that river pretty sporty.
But they're all going one direction. They're going up and down. That's the one. They're not doing circles around you.
That's true. But I've been on St. Croix a few times when it's been a busy yacht weekend if the weather's nice. I'm like, crazy. I got to get off this river. I mean, it's like you're in ocean swells. I mean, it's unbelievable.
There are people that swear that makes the muskie fishing in certain areas just phenomenal. The muskies like the chaos. It's disorienting the prey.
Yeah.
I can see it.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah,
I can see
it. Know there's a theory I read that might hold true that a lot of fishing, you get a big, strong cold front will come in, and a lot of the fishing will shut down, but some of the bigger fish in that body of water will be caught following that cold front. You're not going to raise a bunch of fish. You're probably not going to see a bunch of fish, but if you do,
you got a chance at something.
One of the giants. And the theory behind it, and it seems to make sense to me, it's like when those other fish get lethargic, it's easy pickings then for that big one to just move around and just pick them off, as they don't, they're not running from them. They're being negative or neutral, and it's easier for just because a big fish doesn't want to work at it. They just want to slurp up a 2-pound fish and be done
Yep.
with it and sit on it for a week.
Here's a red horse. I'll just
Yeah,
sitting here doing nothing.
yeah.
I'll just eat it. Yeah.
Easy picking.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I could see that maybe a few big fish have figured that out. That's a habit that they've developed.
some of the really interesting stuff with transmitter stuff done on the St. Croix. So there's buoys all the way from St. Louis all the way up to Stillwater, and then there's buoys that go up to Coon Rapids, up through the city, and up to the last dam that anything can get to. I grew up fishing the Coon Rapids Dam for carp. I lived in Brooklyn Park, and we rode our bikes up there with corn and caught fish.
I've done it.
But we put these transmitters in those fish too, to see if, and it's part of the work to try and stop the invasive carp, the Asian, the jumping carp, silver carp.
Which that's a matter of time.
Right, but they're already there, but they think that the strength of the fishery limits those fish. So the Illinois River, as everybody's seen, they're jumping out by the thousands.
Right.
They're at very low levels in the Mississippi, and they think because it's such a healthy fishery, that's really actually slowing it down. So that's good. I mean, there's no question the Mississippi and the Minnesota and the St. Croix are really good, productive fisheries.
And not to completely derail you, we'll try to get back to your original thought, but I don't want to forget this one. I wonder if there is a correlation between, because the big head carp and the jumping carp, they're plankton feeders, our bodies of water that have zebra mussels in it, is that going to be harder for those fish species?
Yeah, they'd have a lower food.
To get a hold,
they'd have less food available.
It's not going to be.
But all your minnows and stuff are competing for that too.
So it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of a thing going on
Tulibees,
there.
whitefish, those are all competing for that same sort of plankton in the water there. So anyway, back to these buoys. They go all the way from St. Louis all the way up these rivers, and they're trying to find, is there some fish behavior angle to, okay, we can do this kind of barrier, and the fish that we want can go back and forth, but the one won't. And so we've been spending grant money and chapter money, and so is the North Metro, to put transmitters in these fish. And we can put some in there that will tell you what depth they're at. And it's pretty decent location, but depth, temperature of the fish, and it lasts years. And the easy place they get for, unfortunately, we've had this presentation, the easy place that they can net fish, because they're netting carp down at Hastings there at the confluence.
Yep.
They net there. So all the fish that have been tagged for these studies are all from right there. That's their home spot.
Right.
Well, some of them just hang around there. But some of them have gone as far as Red Wing and back, and then all the way up Stillwater and beyond the last transmitter, and then come back. And they roam from they go from narrows and point. And they're using all the regular structure you'd think.
Yeah.
But some of them has gone as far as Red Wing and back,
That's crazy.
which is pretty interesting. They said there are red horse that they have tagged in St. Louis, and days later they're in Minneapolis.
Wow.
They just roam and roam and roam and roam. I know in one of my fishery classes in college, they tagged a walleye at the La Crescent Dam right there in La Crosse, the main deal there. And it went up the Black River, and it was found a couple of months later up the Black River in Wisconsin. So some of those fish, some kinds move all over the place, and people don't really think about it.
I remember reading a study about smallmouth on the Rainy River, and it was somewhat similar, where there was some smallmouth that never, they lived on a rock.
And they just sit there.
All year. December or May, July, it didn't matter. That's where they lived. And then there was other ones that went 30 miles.
All over the place, yeah.
And they would do this big loop. They would just make this big loop. They'd go all the way down, and they'd just turn around, come back up, and they just you had nomadic ones, and then you had homebody ones.
Yep. Yeah, some of the musky tracking that's been done in some of the Canadian Tullibee, whitefish kind of lakes, they'll run a big route around the lake, and then they go sit in some shallow bay to warm up and digest, and they go and do it again. And I know, like I said, that my personal 50-inch fish was caught in December and June in exactly the same place on the same bait. Not exactly. It was maybe 30 yards away.
There's a lot. There's some of that basin roaming going on Mille Lacs for sure. When they're shadowing those schools.
The food is out there, and there's suspended panfish in the metro lakes and stuff.
Sure.
So the top predator is going to follow the food wherever it goes. I know there was a study done several years ago on leech, and a bunch of the Tullibee spawn over on the Portage Bay weed bed, and they know basically what temperature those fish are going to move in to spawn. and they had transmitters and muskies, and lo and behold, they got there the day before the tulipies went into.
Yeah, they know.
They know.
They definitely
they've seen
know.
the same thing even on vermilion, which are stocked fish. They knew these are the spots, and I've cast vermilion in the fall when they put the tulipi nets out, and the biggest fish I've ever seen in vermilion came swimming right out of a tulipi net.
Wow.
So it came lumbering out real slow. It's like, this looks like it probably ate pretty well.
He's probably not going to bite.
Probably not going to bite, but boy, that's a big fish.
That's the one fun thing about musky fishing, though, is catching them. Yeah, that's awesome. But when you just get that follow, it's almost as good as catching them.
Yeah.
I mean, because they're just
you
huge.
Yeah.
I mean,
they come and
as
look
a
at you.
bass fisherman, when I see a bass, I don't get excited. I mean, a little bit. I'm going to cast to it, but it's not like, oh my God. When you see a giant fish following your bait, your heart stops and you're like,
they'll swim up and
adrenaline
you
rush.
can see their eye move and look at you, and
they're
just
not very skittish. Like they're not afraid of boats. Obviously,
they'll do whatever they want.
I've seen so many videos of people figure eighting of following fish or walking that fish around the boat, and it's just staying the same speed and same distance from your bait. And it's like, what are you doing? Why either eat or don't eat? That would be so frustrating.
One of the funniest. I've of course have watched every River Monsters episode.
Right.
If you've ever seen the Musky one when he goes up to Eagle Lake, it's fantastic.
No, I think I have.
Like,
I think I've seen
what are
them all.
What are these fish doing there? I've never seen anything.
Yeah.
It just drives
they
them nuts.
Really only do, I don't know any other fish that really does that.
I mean, you'll see a fish flash behind a bait, but not just kind of come up, give you a look, and go, no, not interested.
That's how I got hooked on musky fishing. We were on White Bear Lake, and we had kind of made it a point to fish for them. I'd bought, I had no money at the time. It was just a kid. And my uncle actually gave me, it was a big Penn open-faced, saltwater reel. And so that was, I got a rod for it, and that was my musky rod.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I had. And I think I bought, maybe a bucktail, a topwater bait, and then I had, a giant
Cisco
daredevil.
kid or something.
No, literally was a giant daredevil.
Oh, yeah, I've got one of those.
And so we'd go out and we would start the day fishing for muskies, me and my buddy Jimmy, and then we wouldn't see anything. We'd get discouraged and we'd go back to bass fishing.
Yeah.
And then the day that it got me was all I saw was this flash, and it was so broad, back to belly was, I don't know,
a foot.
Yeah, a foot. I was just like, ooh, and then he had a big wake behind his that disappeared that day. Or so it was
and you're like, this is different.
I mean, that rush of adrenaline is like, oh, we don't get that bass fishing. So then we spent more and more time casting those baits, and it took longer and longer and longer for us to get bored and stop. And
eventually,
eventually we caught one. So.
Yeah. I know. It'll drive you nuts. It doesn't matter how long you do it. It'll drive you nuts. But I remember I used to be in a Ducks Unlimited chapter, and I gave away a guided trip on Lake Harriet for a prize, and the guys that won it was a priest and his brother. And so we take these guys out fishing, and I had the priest in the boat. I said, okay, I'm going to do my best not to curse, but this really will make you curse. And I caught one small fish, and the guy sees that. And we had really good action. I think we had action on 6 or 7 fish.
Oh, wow.
But that guy lost a fish, and he cursed. I'm like, I told you I wouldn't, but I understand. This will drive you up a wall, but it's pretty exciting.
God forgives you because he created that fish. He knows.
That's right.
He gets it.
I used to have a...
Maybe put him on this planet just to test his leadership.
Yep. We understand it'll make you angry. You're forgiven. I forgive you. I don't know. Maybe somebody else has to, but
they are a fish that definitely captures. They're just a different style of fishing. Everything about it's different.
Yeah. That's sort of what gets at the. I don't know. I consider it an image problem because everybody seems to characterize the musky fishermen as these disgruntled, hardcore. They don't like anybody else fishing. This and that and the other thing. It's not really the case. It's just a very different activity from, pulling up to the walleye flotilla on Winnie and hey, how they doing? It's like
it's fanatical in that it takes a certain personality to really dedicate themselves to going after this fish that doesn't
Takes
bite
forever.
every day. It's not. I mean, it's a different kind of person. And it's the same. Same can be said for a lot of things, like waterfowl hunting. I mean, you're half the season, you're freezing your balls off. The weather's crappy, and you're out there loving life. I mean, that's not normal.
I guess. But I mean,
not normal.
The chance for the crazy encounter is just worth it. You know. I mean, my dad was
like when the muskies follow, they bite. When the ducks are working the decoys just right, or the geese.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Feet down,
but you look at all the work and all the misery to get to that point.
I mean, you forget all about that. I mean, you're just into the moment. You know. It's
I just got sick of eating snow geese.
What? They're the best.
Way too many. Well, my
I
dad always.
If you eat it too much, I mean.
We used to go to Saskatchewan. My dad, he went for years with his buddies, and then would bring the geese home, and I had to clean them. And so all I did was reload shells and clean geese for 10 years before I got to go and do it. So that'll give it a negative connotation.
I would say.
So, but we still ate geese like crazy forever. And then when I was in college in La Crosse, the duck hunting was phenomenal down there. So we did quite a bit of that. That was a blast. There was all kinds of fun wood ducks and teal and everything.
You get the
right
divers
away.
come through there,
too. It was a blast. Yeah, well, you had to be careful with the canvasbacks because they were protected then. But
well, if you can't spot a snow white bird coming.
Well, a hen canvasback was a little harder.
Yeah, but they're still.
I had one buddy that shot one and he got nailed for it.
Oops. I mean, they're bigger. They're bigger than redheads. I know they kind of sort of look like them.
They would actually come out. The DNR would come out and they'd say, "Okay, what's that?" As it's flying by. They would actually quiz the hunters out there because they were that concerned about the canvasbacks, and you had to know what you're looking at. It's like, it's a bufflehead. That's a spoonbill. And
if anybody's good enough to tell me on the wing at low light the difference between a ringneck hen and a redhead hen and a bluebill hen,
good luck.
You're the better man than I.
We were hunting out there in the Halloween blizzard in '91, and you probably could have used a baseball mitt. There was so much stuff flying. It took us hours to get home in the blizzard, but it was crazy good hunting.
I've had a couple mornings where before legal shooting is dark and the divers are making their rounds around the lake, and the ringers, they make that like jet sound when they come over. And there's a couple times I like ducked. I'm like, is my hat going to get knocked off? I mean, they sounded so close. You couldn't see them. It was just pitch black, but that just...
Yeah, it doesn't even sound like they're
that Doppler
beating
effect.
their wings.
Yeah,
like, how'd you get going that fast?
What is going on?
Yeah.
Crazy. That just fires me up, too.
Yeah. So I used to do a lot of duck hunting, but I got it so into fishing, I can't give it up.
And I'm a big waterfowl hunter, and that was that's tough in the fall because musky fishing is just getting really good.
Yeah, and now it's like
they're starting to really strap up the feed bag about the same time the divers show up, and you're like, what do we do?
You can't do them both.
Then you throw deer in the mix, and there's just so much to do in the fall.
I have accidentally fished my way into some decoy sets.
It happens. I've seen it.
It come around the weeds on a point or something like.
And that's the thing. Duck hunters a lot of times set up on points for obvious reasons.
Like, okay,
and that's also a really good place to fish.
Yeah.
So you're going to have...
Mind if I fish through your decoys?
Yeah, it's tough.
The ducks aren't coming if I'm here, so...
Right.
I'll fish through.
I've had that problem. I've heard both arguments on that, and I feel like I'm a decent person, a moderator of it, because I enjoy both pastimes almost equally as obsessively. So it's like... I get it. If I'm in the duck blind and a musky fisherman, or even whoever, walleye guy's trolling him, you're not gonna make me mad. I mean, I get it.
The ducks aren't there the whole time.
Lake. It's not. Yeah, I mean, as long as you don't anchor,
right?
I'm gonna be a little irritated.
Well, I've had that run in on Cass Lake before, and it's like, okay, so I get that on the west side of Cass. There's some reed islands and stuff, and these guys are, but the break line is right there. I mean, that is the spot. But that happens on Lake Independence. Still has youth hunting at least, and boy, that's a pretty small, busy lake in the metro to have that kind of activity going on. I mean, I've had guys that are setting up their duck boat right there, and it's like we're all trying to get out musky fishing. You're putting a vest on your dog, and
well, I mean, the one nod I will give to like the waterfowlers is that they have a short window of time to pursue their passion, and the fishermen have been fishing all summer long. So if I have to give a little leeway to one of those passions, I'm probably going to give that nod to the duck hunter. It's like,
Yeah, I don't blame the people
Yeah.
for hunting ducks on Lake Independence. I just can't believe you can hunt ducks on a lake.
Yeah, right. Well, it's probably they're probably on borrowed time as populations.
Not
just
fully developed on the west
expand,
side, but it's almost entirely
well,
developed.
you can hunt on Otter Lake and like between like just north of White Bear Lake a little bit. That's like super developed. But there's like only a little corner of the lake I believe that you can legally hunt on.
Yeah.
People do though. I mean, Forest Lake, you can hunt the last lake in the chain. You can hunt there. And lake owners aren't usually too happy because they get woke up at
it does
pretty
seem
early.
a little. It's pretty close by.
Pretty early, but it's. I mean, at least Forest is pretty big. You're not going to be shooting at any houses.
Right.
You know, it's you don't have to worry about shot landing on your on your roof.
I mean,
or
in
anything,
these
but
900 acres, it's not not that big a
yeah,
lake.
it's really not. It's really not that big of a lake, but. I don't know. I've shot up some pretty small ponds, so
yeah. I mean, the
ducks
babies
there,
aren't going
I'm
that
be
far.
there.
I'd be more about
No.
you're going to be nailing somebody in the pontoon boat coming by.
Yeah, well, you would hope that they're smarter than that, but I've been proven wrong before on that too.
The pleasure boaters don't have any idea what they're driving by. I mean, we had a guy in the chapter last weekend get he was trolling on Minnetonka on, I think it was Saturday afternoon. It's no wake. A jet boat came so close behind him that it busted both of his trolling rods.
Wow.
He goes, he said, what's the distance they're supposed to, I said, it's 150 feet they're supposed to stay from. He goes, well, we only had 40 feet of line out, and the guy snagged both baits.
Wow.
They followed him to the boat launch. He says, it couldn't be me. Like,
It could be me.
you would know if
you, bro.
You went by waving at us right off the back end of the boat and literally tore one of the rods off, busted them both.
That sucks.
And I've had people on Independence run a jet ski right up, so they're just about to come in the back of the boat before. It's like they're not paying attention, and they don't get that you're actually trolling at 4 miles an hour.
Right.
You know,
which is fast.
Yeah, but you got to watch out. And
Yeah.
the pleasure boaters come by and they just kind of wave.
Some people that may not have trolled much or trolled for muskies, like 4 miles an hour. That's a clip, man. That's a fast troll.
My fastest I caught one at 9.5.
On purpose? Like
Yeah.
you weren't just like,
Yeah.
hey, let's hurry up and just idle over there quick.
No, I was dragging a jerk bait on 30 feet of line, 9.5 miles an hour, and caught a 40-incher. But took my arm off. But
that is hauling.
So, I mean, they can swim 30 miles an hour. So
Well, yeah, but I mean,
they can close up pretty
they're
good.
no wahoo, but I mean, the speeds they troll for them things out in the ocean is ridiculous.
I just burned a lot of gas doing that,
Exactly.
so I gave up on the 9 miles an hour.
And I know, like, I had this conversation with somebody recently, too. It's like, I know I would catch more muskies if I trolled. I'm just not a troller. It does nothing for me.
You got to, and there's a lot of details to it. People think it's just driving around.
Yeah,
it's not.
You got contours.
You got to be, contouring and lots of people. There's a couple of different types of boards now that are just clip-on boards that are perfectly good for musky baits, that kind of thing. It gets people you can get people a fish that probably weren't going to be able to put in the effort, or, well, as you know, you take somebody that doesn't normally fish out, they get wore out in a hurry.
Well,
I mean, I've taken bodybuilders out. I'm like, you're not going to be able to last very long. They're sitting, with the rod and reel way out in front of them. It's like, you're going to be done in a half an hour. What are you talking about? Like, you have to be efficient at this and conserve your energy and movement and that kind of thing.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah,
I mean,
you need to make it as easy as
pulling
possible.
a double cowgirl through the water all day long, like, you're going to be wore out at the end of the day.
I twitch crankbaits because you reel up slack line all the time.
Yeah, we call my buddy Jimmy and I was calling it boat prop. I mean, it had one before the cowgirls came out. We just used, I don't remember the actual name of this bait, but it had a giant blade on it, just giant. And when you're reeling in, I mean, you just feel the resistance, and it would just create this huge wake. If you keep it up, pick your rod tip up. But yeah, we always called it throwing the boat prop.
Yeah,
that's just what it felt like coming through the water. It was displacing so much water.
Oh yeah, but that's what gets their fish's attention.
That's throwing that vibration out there for sure. Yeah. I mean, that first one I caught on White Bear was on a. Was it the Awakener? What's the walk the dog one? Jackpot.
The Pose giant
jackpot. Yeah, that's what it came on. And I didn't even get to see the hit.
Really?
So I was working. We were working Ordway Bar, and we're just getting to the end of the bar, like right to the end of the tip of it that we were working. And so I was already, I'd cast, and I'm working the bait, and I'm kind of looking around, like, where should we go next? And I hear a splash. I turn back. I don't see my bait. I'm still trying to work it because topwater bass fishing, I've trained myself like to not set the hook until I feel the fish.
Yep,
so
same with
I
musky
don't
fishing.
feel it, and I'm like trying to work it, and next thing I just see my line. I'm like, I just reel down, crank on it, and then all hell broke loose.
Yeah, it's hard when you see them. I mean, if they're following, you see the wake pushing up and it's tipping the bait or whatever. But sometimes it's just like somebody flushed a toilet. The thing just disappears. And if you set the hook then, it's just coming right back at you. It's so hard to
It
hold
takes a long
there.
time to train yourself to not, and like the first time, like especially like frog fishing for bass, it's like every year, the first couple blow-ups.
Throw it over the boat,
Idiot. Don't do that. Yeah, you're doing the Neo Matrix thing because this frog's flying right back at your face, and you got to dodge it.
Yeah.
And,
or you get... Even if something's there,
I wouldn't like a jackpot coming back at my face. That would cause problems.
I got somebody else's bucktail in the back of my head once, and that was not cool. It knocked me. I was out for a second, and it caught the collar of my shirt and one hook in the back of my head.
It just gives me heebie-jeebies thinking
great.
about it.
So when somebody else in the back skips it off the outboard or something, you're like, hey, pay attention.
Easy, yeah. And
that thing's doing 150 miles an hour.
I snagged my back seat one time. You want the definition of epic backlash? That's how you get an epic backlash. Because when on your back cast, you snag something, and then you're chucking a big bait as hard as you can forward, that reel just blows up. There was no saving that. That was just
out of there.
Yeah, that was 20 minutes and a pair of scissors getting that out of there.
Yeah.
We're going to have to put new line on this. There's no way this is coming out.
Yeah.
Oh, it was bad. I was like, oh. That was not a good way to – I think it was pretty early in the day, too. Not a good way to start the day at all.
No, because you're pretty much done with that rod for the day.
Yeah, so Minnesota just opened the musky season for the season. I mean, like, not the first year, but and I think, oddly, they did well. So like usually early season, like, it takes a while before you start seeing some good reports. But
yeah, Mille Lacs did, I mean, some really big fish were caught. Not a ton, but people get mid 50-inch fish, people pay attention because that water was so cold.
So big.
I did not do well on Saturday morning. I was out on Minnetonka, and it was 91 degrees when I went to bed, and it was 52 when I went out.
Yeah,
so,
that'll change it.
I had to be in by midday, and the people I know that did see fish, move fish, catch some fish were later in the day when it finally started to warm up. So, yeah, I think Sunday people did quite a bit better, too. So.
That's the one multiple good things about fishing muskies in the fall is you don't have to be up with the sun. You can actually sleep
afternoon is actually the good time.
Let the water warm up a little bit and then head out.
Yeah.
Because what I tell you, with our crazy long days in Minnesota here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you go out at 4:30 in the morning in June. It's crazy.
It's ridiculous. You're up with the sun, and the sun is a really early riser.
Yeah. Well, for the Metro Lakes, it's good. It's pretty much sailboats and fishermen until 11:30. So if you're out there early, you can get a good 5-6 hours in before
another
it gets crazy.
Another Jimmy story. We were in Canada up at Ear Falls and hardcore fishing for a solid week at a resort up there, and I think our days are long here. Continue further north.
Oh yeah,
it's light at 10 o'clock.
We used to go up there,
and we fished dark to dark, so it was.
It's light all night. You can see at 11 o'clock at night. It's crazy.
By Thursday, it was getting real hard to get up at 4:30 in the morning. Let me tell you, we still did it. I mean, I think maybe it started going into 5:30 towards the end of the week.
Yeah.
But we still, and we were chucking those bucktails all day, every day. We take some.
Were you on the English River or something there?
Yeah, I think it was the English
River. You didn't win a trip to that resort on the English River.
Heck yes, we
so
did.
I.
Naughty Fines. Fellow winner? Oh, you're in good company.
My wife won one, and she's like, I'm not going on that. So my buddy and I went up there. And then everybody at the resort, it turns out, the guy had a great gimmick. And then the resort burnt down. We fished
something else.
They had dropped the river 3 feet the day we got there. And I got a really nice 48-incher, and we caught 142. And I think we only raised one other fish the rest of the week.
I think we raised one muskie, and we didn't catch anything but pike that whole trip.
Yeah, it was
a pike.
It was
we got
tough
some nice
place
ones,
to fish.
but
it was neat. But
that
resort was a
Naughty
great
Pines
gimmick.
Fish Camp, man.
That's a great gimmick.
Yeah, especially because they charge twice as much as any of them.
Right.
You didn't win shit.
I'd never seen a place with more mice, though. We set the food on the counter and took a nap from our drive, and they were eating the hamburger buns like in the middle of the afternoon. It burnt down.
It's garbage. Did it really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, karma's a real thing.
Like 2 years after I was there, it burnt down.
Wow.
And I know somebody that was there when it burnt. They went out fishing, came back, and the resort was gone.
It's probably a guest probably lit that place
I think
on
it was
fire.
lightning.
Yeah, sure it was. I'm not mad about it, and I know the community's not mad about it because we kind of, we had our experience in midweek, and we were taking a break. Let's run into town, So we ran into town. There's a local bait shop in there, and the guy that ran the bait shop, he was a great dude. He's from Wisconsin originally, so he's a Packer fan. So we started giving him shit about that. But he married a Minnesota woman, and she was a Vikings fan, so he was well versed in the rivalry.
Some conflict.
Yeah, and he was super good sport about it. And so we just were shooting the shit, and he's like, "Oh, so where are you staying?" We're like, Naughty Pines Fish Camp, and he just goes, "Who won the trip?" God damn it!
Yeah, we figured that
out. I thought
out.
we had been had, and you've just confirmed it.
We figured it out second day. Well, it was reasonable price. It wasn't terrible, but the place was full of mice.
That's just garbage. And then they shut their runs on generator.
Yeah,
and
they shut the power off.
Shut the power off at night. You can't charge trolling motor batteries. If you do catch a trophy fish, beginning part of the week, you gotta spend a small fortune on their ice to keep that thing good enough to get it to a taxidermist. You ask for fishing reports, they're tight-lipped. It'll just tell you it's on Lake Unexpected, which is the last lake in the chain.
We went all the way down there.
Of course you do, because then you're spending more money on gas. And it's like the whole thing is set up to just extract as much money out of you as possible.
I got the 48 right out in front of the resort.
In the most unethical way. Like, the place is just...
The two fish we actually caught were in front of the resort.
I'm not mad that it burnt down. Not even a little.
Now
actually, I might sleep a little better tonight.
The long-legged river dumps in there, and that's another place that they charge a fortune to get into. So the long-legged river it runs in there, and it goes to Long-Legged Lake. And Long-Legged Lake is the northernmost musky lake that anybody really knows of.
Really?
It's just a little bit further north than Lac Seul because that river runs out of Lac Seul, right? And so we were like, we're going to go fish by the mouth of the Long-Legged River because there's big muskies in that. And that place was another deal where they charged a fortune to get in. There was no road in there. And they made it this very, very exclusive deal. And you used to hear all kinds of buzz about it, and I don't know what's happened with it, but you don't really hear anybody talking about it anymore.
No.
They were charging so much to get. It's like $3,000 a week or something to stay there. It's like, these are musky fishermen. They're not going to.
Yeah.
Some of them are doctors and lawyers, but a lot of them aren't. So.
Right. Yeah. Do you chase the early season? Do you go south?
No, I haven't really.
You don't go to like Kentucky or Tennessee.
St. Croix.
That stuff?
That's it.
That's it.
We have our chapter has there's an outing that goes down to Iowa, and funny, this year it's in April, and I went up to open my cabin in northern Minnesota, and it was 52 degrees and sunny, and the pictures I kept seeing people were posting from down there was snowing.
Oh, geez.
So they got a blizzard for the April trip this year. There were a couple of fish actually caught, surprisingly, in a blizzard in April in Iowa. But, so we run an early spring outing down there. And we actually, our last speaker we had a guy that came from the guides down there, came and talked. So,
Well, man, is there anything else you want to pimp out? You got some events coming up?
I don't think so. Like I said, we got all this stuff. It's like all this weekend, though. So
yeah, this
probably
weekend.
Too late.
Yeah, well, I'll try to get this up like right away. Maybe if I don't get it uploaded tonight, it'll be first thing tomorrow. So it'll be available. The
two big deals we have for the rest of the season are much later. We have the Frank Schneider tournament we run. That's 53 years or something now, and it's a huge tournament. It's in the Leech Lake area, but it's everything from Bemidji and Plantagenet all the way down to Longville, Wabido, Ingwadana down there.
So it's a really big area.
Over to Winnie. Nobody fishes Winnie except me and two other people. But Leech, Cass, Big, all those, that whole lake, I think there's 23 lakes. And we get 500, usually about 500 participants in it.
Oh, wow.
It's usually about $15,000 prize. It's about somewhere around $100 to enter.
Ooh, that's a pretty good payout.
And I got second in it the first time I fished it.
Attaboy.
And my buddy and I, we've, in 10 years of fishing it, we've placed in the top 10 4 times.
Wow.
So it's
well done.
We're shocked. We're like first tournament I ever fished. Like I got second place in the biggest muskie tournament in the country.
Nice.
But,
there is one other thing I want to talk about real quick. So going back to like where our cabin is there a lake in Crow Wing County that has muskies in it yet?
in the county?
Well, I know
Gull
back
is now.
in the day they do. They have stocked
Gull
it
is
in Gull.
stocked.
Okay,
But
so they do.
yeah, so the I don't know where. So Miltona's got them. Alexander, that is a known musky lake.
Yeah, but that's not in Crow Wing County.
No, is it Hamdiu? That's got them.
Hamadiu, yeah.
The ones, all those ones that are like close by there and connected to the river.
Otter Tail County, all
Yep,
that area.
those are.
Yeah, I just remember reading something about how Crow Wing County. I mean, the Mississippi River has it, obviously.
Yep.
It has them in it, but there was no
lake
in Crow Wing County that had muskies in it, and they've been trying, and they've been getting shot down by all these walleye fishing groups.
There's one or two lakes there that have been on the list. The DNR has a list of lakes that they've been trying to establish, and there is one in that area. I can't remember the name of it.
What strain did they put into Gull?
Leech, I'm sure.
The Leech Lake strain.
Yeah. And like I said,
really
that would have been Mississippi
It's not really
River.
a very identical lake.
No, but there's actually Leech Lake strain fish in the Mississippi River.
In the Mississippi River. Oh, okay. All right.
So that is Leech Lake strain.
Historically, they probably were there before we started building dams.
Yeah, for sure. There's some resort or bar or something on the lake there has a fish that was caught in 1984 on the wall. So it's pretty hard to say there weren't fish there.
No, that
wasn't that long ago.
If anything's connected to those rivers,
before
we started damming them up, and
they were roaming in and out of whatever they could get to.
When did they stock that first?
That's been stocked for about 4 years now.
4 years, so probably nothing big in there.
Nothing big in there yet. Give it another 2 or 3 years, and you'll start being fish pushing 40 inches probably.
Growth rate about 5-6 years
in the
for
metro.
a 40-incher?
In the metro, yes. In northern Minnesota,
fast.
it's slower. Yeah, they grow really fast in the metro, especially. It takes about 7 years, I think, to get to a 40, 42-inch fish in the metro, and it takes a fair amount longer. We've ballpark. Well, I can say I know exactly when that one Wisconsin strain fish was put in. It was a year old in 1986, and I caught it in 99 and 2000. It probably didn't live another year or two.
Yeah.
But still, that's a 16, 17-year
What's
span.
the average lifespan of a muskie?
In the metro here, they think it's close to 20 years, and further north, it's much, much longer.
Wow,
so
that's pretty old.
By the time you get into Lake of the Woods, they're going probably
fast.
30
They
or
live
more.
a long time. That's pretty rare in the fish world.
I mean, that's, like I said, they're a pretty durable top predator for the lakes around most of Minnesota. So.
They're great, and I'm glad they're in the lakes. I think.
I mean, it freaks people out that there's fish that big around, but it's like, okay, here's a sturgeon that's even bigger.
Well,
here's some 60-pound catfish.
How rare is what we have our first recorded muskie attack, official muskie attack in air quotes, like a few years back.
Yeah, and so there's, in response to, because that gets thrown out, they're going to eat the children. And I've been at a couple of these like neighborhood meetings where they're talking about putting them in a lake, and you would think that there's people with knives running around killing everyone. I mean, it's just like, we can't even have the grandchildren to our house anymore. I mean, I've literally heard people say,
oh my God.
So consider, I looked up on the DNR website, how many otters are there? Because there's been 2 otter attacks. And you look at how many otter attacks there are, and they think there's 2,000 otters in the state. Well, there's way more than 2,000 muskies. So what's more dangerous? What should we have? Then how many dogs bite people?
Right.
Oh, well, okay.
You can't use logic and rationale when you're dealing with an emotional subject. It's the same way with the wolves, and people lose their mind when we've had wolves in Minnesota for forever.
Oh, I know.
And they're the reason that the deer hunting sucks. It's like, dude, they've been on the landscape for forever. But literally even in the states where they haven't been, and they're starting to come back, you get this weird pushback. It's like, I like knowing muskies are out there. I'm not afraid to swim. I like knowing wolves are on the landscape. I don't want to eradicate wolves. I like knowing they're out there. You don't ever run into them. Hardly
once
ever.
in a while.
If you're a livestock, I've seen them. I have seen wolves. But, if you're a cattle rancher or a sheep farmer or something, you're probably not a big fan of them. But that's why, we have programs that reimburse you for lost.
For that stuff. I know my brother's very last time deer hunting. Around Winnie, there's no deer because, we've had the windstorm and did a whole bunch of forest destruction, so the deer population is definitely on the rebound. So are the varmints, critters, and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
my brother, my older brother's last time deer hunting, he and I were hunting in a similar, very close area, and I heard a couple of shots. So I got out of my stand. It was getting close to dark, so I walked over to him. And he had gotten out of his stand and leaned his gun against a tree and walked over to the doe that he shot, and the wolf that was chasing it ran up on the deer.
Oh, no.
And the wolf turned around and ran away.
Yeah.
My brother was
They
white
don't
as,
want anything to do with man. And
no, he was white as a sheet, and he's never gone deer hunting again.
Oh, I would have been jacked. I think that would have been super cool.
He had just crouched down to the deer and then came running up the trail.
I would have been. I mean, I probably would have been startled, but I would have been jacked. That would have been awesome. I think that would have been pretty kick-ass. But it's like when you try to get – the point I was trying to make is like when bringing in logic and over-emotional thing is like when you try to get a hunting season or a trapping season for wolves in the state, which has probably the healthiest
wolf population
in the lower 48 and has for quite some time. Even when the western states are struggling, we're doing just fine.
That happened in the 80s with my brother.
It's going to be fine. Like it's not going to – we're always going to have them.
Yeah, but people have a skewed view of like how many deer there should be. So when you pave their landscape with every other acre as food, instead of them having to look around for stuff to eat, you get a much higher deer population than ever existed before there was agriculture paving the world. Same with geese.
And
snow geese are their world is paved with food.
And we're finding out that it's the white-tailed deer in the northeast part of the state that is causing the demise of the moose.
Right.
They're transferring that brainworm around, and they've just never. I mean, now we're clearing more forest, and there's more agriculture up there than there ever used to be, and now the moose are running into deer, and that's how we're getting that problem.
I'm sure the wolves are having an impact on the moose. Now, I do think the extreme opposite happening on Isle Royale is an interesting. Well, I would have called it an experiment, but they've decided to make it a pet project.
Yes.
With adding more wolves.
They just had one die.
They've put 5 more out there, and one of them left and went back home.
Just swam. He's like,
ran across the ice.
This place,
I'm
out.
Yeah, it's like you're downwind of where you used to live, and you can smell all the little tasty critters over there. You just run across that ice. But so that whole experiment, they've been monitoring that since like the 50s, and they say, okay, the moose got out there in the 30s, and the wolves got out there in the 40s. And then they have petered out because the ice doesn't freeze as often now as it did before. Well, how are the moose not already there, and how are the wolves not already there before the 20s and 40s or whatever they think they got there? Before that, they weren't there. Why weren't they there? It should have been frozen all the time, and they should have gotten there and had all this genetic mixing and all this stuff. It's just not a big enough area for the two to exist.
It's an aberration spot. Yeah, they're there.
It's a total oddball.
Something I always say when it comes down to the ever-changing landscape, whether you're talking about fish, invasive species, deer, wolves, whatever it might be, we think that everything how it is now is how it should always be,
or how we think it used to be,
or it used to be better, or how it needs to be. Yeah, it's like the point is like nature is never static. It's constant state of flux.
Yeah.
Like it's constantly changing. It's constantly adapting. It has to. I mean, that's how the strong survive. And that's the core, the fundamental core of Darwinism.
Yeah.
If you, I mean, that's what drives the whole thing.
Like when I was a kid, Mille Lacs was referred to as McDonald Lake. Home of the quarter pounder, because nobody ever caught any decent sized walleyes. Then you think of the early 2000s, it was, monstrous walleyes, right? And now they've
and then it was the Dead Sea 15 years ago. And then now it's world class.
Yeah, it has changed dramatically. Yeah. And it was fishing pressure because it was the first close lake. The gas crunch in the 70s, in the late 70s and early 80s, the number of people fishing Winnie dropped way off. Everybody went to Mille Lacs because it was a lot closer. And then they started putting regulations on that, and that pushes everybody back to Winnie. And then they put regulations on that, and it pushes them over to Leech and Cass. And
the thing with nature is like there's no right or wrong. There's no morality within nature. That's a human trait that we project onto things.
Right, onto the fishery.
Onto animals, onto the entire ecosystem. It's, if there was never wolves or if there was never moose on Isle Royale, and then you had a hard freeze and a couple stumbled over there, was that right?
Just happened.
It just happened. It's not right. And then wolves showed up later to eat the moose. Was that right or wrong? No, it's just indifferent. It just happened.
But now when you're...
And then they leave. Is that right or wrong? Like, they're not there anymore. We got to freak out. Is that right or wrong? No, it's just different. It's just... There is no right way for nature. Like,
right. So now, if they would have...
happens.
Instead of putting more wolves out there, if they would have let the moose denude the islands again like they did before... Wolves are going to get back out there.
Yeah.
There's going to be moose all over the place, starving. The wolves are going to eat them like crazy, and then the trees will grow.
Yeah, I think the better experiment is to leave it alone and see what happens.
Yeah, but they said, well, then the trees are all going to get eaten.
Then that's what happens.
That's what happened before. I'm sure it happened many, many times.
Then that's what happened. I mean, the analogy I always like to bring up, it's like, especially if we do something, we introduce an invasive species. That's the worst thing ever. That's like... Humans apparently don't have a right to impact our world. Anything we do is just
considered
demonized.
Yep.
And I'm not saying let's go out and pollute everything. Let's just be willy-nilly. That's not what I'm saying at all. But we have to keep things in perspective. So the analogy I always use is like if there's a small island out in the ocean that never had, just some bird life and some bugs and whatever. There's no real predators on it. If a big hurricane blows up, sweeps a bunch of palm trees and garbage out there, and this iguana hitches a ride out there, pure accident, lands on the island, finds all sorts of food, takes over, eats this bug, exterminates this bug, moves on to the next one, and all of a sudden now there's a population of iguanas on this island where there never used to be. We would just be like, wow, crazy how nature works.
Yeah.
Had that iguana got there because it was a stowaway on a fishing boat,
then it's bad.
Oh, my God. Yeah. This should never have happened. It's not right or wrong. It just happened.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying we shouldn't try to preserve things. I'm on board with preservation. That makes sense. But we have to temper ourselves and not lose our shit every time something hitches a ride, and now you just have a new reality.
Yep.
Look at Florida. I mean, there's so many invasive species down there. In the waterways, you've got peacock bass, knifefish, snakeheads, all sorts of aquarium fish that people have just let go. You're never getting rid of those. They're just there. We got pythons in the Everglades. You're not putting that genie back in the bottle.
Yeah.
So you're going to spend millions and millions and millions trying to on a losing battle that is a losing battle.
I mean,
or
you should try and prevent it.
Yeah, try to prevent it. But if it happens, I mean, you can manage it. Like, have liberalized hunting season. I guarantee you somebody's willing to go out there and pursue those animals and harvest those animals. I guarantee you somebody's willing to pay you to do that instead of spending a shit ton of money. So accept the new reality, manage it the best that you can, but let's not freak out every time. I mean, do our best, obviously in the front end that these things don't happen, but then when they do happen, let's just stay logical and let's let scientists dictate how we manage it and not lawmakers. And that goes back to the Musky thing. It's
that's
like,
a huge
you
deal.
Go back to the otter tail. It's like, I don't believe that our legislators should be the ones setting game and fish laws.
No.
That should be left up to game and fish managers.
And the DNR is supposed to take public input. I get that. But when the public input is, these things are going to eat my grandchildren.
It needs to be based in science.
That needs to be said.
Yes.
Sorry, that's not what goes on. But there's a couple of things here. The use of invasive species as an excuse to keep people off of my lake.
Right.
The whole Wright County thing, that's probably what we have seen in the last several, and it's been this way for a long time, but the success of Wright County actually for 1 year or 2 years, they aren't doing it this year, doing that we're just not going to let you on these lakes unless you go through Annandale and go through the boat check, and we decide when that runs. Minnetonka had tried that several years ago. Boy, I went to those meetings. That was very contentious. The lakes in downtown, Harriet, Calhoun, those are controlled. The boat launches are controlled by the park department, and you got to get checked in and out of there. Christmas Lake basically shut the whole thing down there to get out there and fish trout. I used to love going out there and fly cast in the spring for trout, but that lake access, people are using it as an excuse to get people off of their lake. And if that's going to happen, I have a cabin on Winnie, and I don't want anybody on my lake. There's only 40 cabins. It's the 5th largest lake in the state.
Is that right?
I'll have it to myself.
There's only 40 cabins.
So, yeah, we'll just make sure nobody can go there.
Crazy.
Because those words were actually spoken that we were looking at getting fish in Big Marine because they stopped stocking tiger muskies in that part of the metro, the northeast part of the metro. And they said, well, Big Marine has a terribly stunted northern population.
Yeah,
I've fished it. It's got a ton of them. And they said we want to make this a potential new musky lake. And we got huge pushback at the public input meeting. And I bit my tongue when the guy said, well, when I go up to Winnie walleye fishing, it gets real busy, but that's a big lake and it can take it. But on my lake, and I wanted to raise my hand and said,
whose lake?
My lake is Winnie, so I don't want you coming up to my lake.
Right.
And we tried to say, these are public waters. It's like, but this guy, he was literally the exact opposite of what I could have said to him, and say, get off of my lake.
Yeah, you got my vote for putting muskies in Big Marine. I think it would be great.
And it got shot down. It's another one that they got so much.
There's quality fish in there, and they're only going to get better if you put muskies in there, in my opinion.
They get the DNR gets a little bit of pushback, and they tend to back off. I understand why they do, but I understand what their inputs are supposed to consider too, and with just the tiniest amount of pushback from 1 or 2 people, Gull had pushback from just a couple of people,
right?
But everybody there's got a lot of money, and they fought that. Invasive species. I'm like, they could jump. We'll just help them jump over the dam and
build a fish ladder.
It's a musky lake.
They're going to get in there anyway.
Yeah, with a fish ladder, it would already continue to be a musky lake.
Right.
So,
which I think they should put. I think if you're going to do any broad sweeping thing as far as getting stuff back to the good old days of the way it used to be, I think almost in any dam you should have a fish ladder.
Yeah, I don't unless. Say, like Coon Rapids is the barrier for carp. There's no carp.
That's true.
So leave that. Fine.
That's a good point.
I'd leave that.
That's a good point.
There's a whole lot of carp on the downstream side of that thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of carp. Well, going back to Lake Minnetonka, there's giant carp in that,
yeah.
and I don't think you can bow fish it because
you can.
Okay, you can bow fish.
You can as of a couple of years ago. Boy, that was the first time I saw that. I
remember that was a big thing because people didn't want the lights at night. It was like, so you'd rather have these carp in there then? Like, there's only one group of sportsmen out there
willing to do anything
about the rough fish population, and you're keeping them off your lake.
Well, the muskies go after them some too. So.
Oh, I guarantee you, they don't even have spikes.
Yeah,
they're gonna eat carp.
Granted, not the 30-pounders, but the little ones are getting chomped.
Oh, for sure.
It's a good color out there to fish.
Carp. Orange is a good color anywhere.
Gold, orange, and black is probably one of the top colors out there these days. So. They get. I've seen them chasing them around in the shallows before. So.
You know what you never see? Here's a rant, but how come you never see a 3-inch carp, or even a 12-inch carp?
I've seen them maybe 12-inch.
They're like 18 inches.
Oh yeah, they're rutting around.
They must grow super fast.
Yeah,
I've never seen a school of like carp fry.
I've been out on the north end of the lake, on the shallow sand on the north end of the lake, right after the ice went out, and must have been some warm water. And it was just acres and acres of 20 to 30-pound carp, just huge carp.
There are some. I was just down in a dock. I don't remember why I was there, and my jaw just hit the floor. Like looking at this fish was just massive, and it was a carp. I was trying to catch it because they're doing that thing where they come up and they just like lip the top, and I had my thumb in there, and they were like kind of sniffing around, and I'm like, I'm gonna try to lip one of those things. There's no way I was getting a 30-pound fish out of water with my hands.
Snag them once in a while trolling, and boy, pulling a 30-pound fish in sideways is a lot of work.
Now you probably think you got something good. And
then you got the lady of the lake there, and you're like,
oh man.
You can keep a scale that's 3 inches around. But
right. Oh, they did change that with the bow fishing thing.
So they do bow. You do see a few people going out there, but that's a mixing the bow fishing crowd and the pleasure boater crowd. It's got to be interesting.
Yeah, but there's not too much pleasure boating going on at night when most people are bow fishing.
They park all along the shores. I mean, there's hundreds of boats that spend the night. They spend the night out there.
crazy. Minnetonka's an interesting thing. It's a crazy lake.
I'm surprised. I've never had trolling rods broke out there.
I haven't fished
it
in years. I mean, the only thing that really keeps me off it is just like the idea of trailering my boat through the cities to get there.
Yeah, so I live in St. Louis Park. It's a short drive.
So when I'm going to go fish, I go north. I'm already north of the cities, so I'm going north or west or east. I'm like, that's
15 minutes from my door.
Anything south of me is just pretty much off limits because I'm like, I don't want to deal with traffic.
It's nice. Yeah, it's my short. It's
bad enough with a truck and a boat. Ugh.
I live 3 miles from Calhoun and 15 minutes from Minnetonka. So
yeah, well, that makes
I haven't
sense.
been on Calhoun in years, and I've caught some really nice fish out there. So
time to get back at it.
Yeah, you still got to do the check through to get out there.
Bring the kayak out there. Catch a muskie with a kayak.
Well, there's guys that do troll. You do see guys trolling muskies, paddling kayaks. I can't believe the people that kayak on, say, Minnetonka or whatever. You talk to them about big fish, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, well, you must be running past them constantly, carp and muskies, northerns. I mean, they're
just oblivious to it.
Yeah, it's like I've come to the realization that
when you're in a kayak, you can't really see much. Now, a paddleboard, you got a good vantage point.
I've come to the realization that the fishermen look at the lake as structure with water on it, and the pleasure boaters and everybody else looks at it as a flat sheet of water to drive around on.
Yeah.
And there's no mix of the two.
No, anything that impedes that is terrible.
Yep.
Weeds,
they don't look at it
or whatever.
They don't understand that you're fishing it. They don't have a depth finder. They don't even know that there's depth. They just know there's a sheet of water.
Right. Oh, I've seen so many pleasure boaters scream across something. You're like waiting to just see that motor pop out. You're like, you shouldn't be around playing right there. You're like, oh, they made it. Wow. I'm surprised.
You'll run into somebody on one of the metro lakes, Minnetonka especially. Yeah, we hit something. It's not possible. If you're outside the buoys, there's nothing to hit. You could not have hit anything. Of course, then you see them tubing up on top of the reef or something.
Yeah.
And
like, wow. All right.
You deserve it.
Keeping insurance companies and people that
Marinas
rebuild lower units of business.
Yeah.
For sure. So does Muskies Inc., do they have a Facebook page?
We do. We have Twin Cities Muskies Inc. Facebook page. There's another one that's for our league. We have a league that just started this week, and I'm already a week behind. And we've got I think we've got some information there on that page to get to it. We do have one other fall metro. So the Frank Schneider tournament that I was talking about before is in northern Minnesota, and that was dreamt up to the people that founded Muskies Inc. loved fishing in northern Wisconsin, and they'd go up to northern Minnesota, and their idea was to kind of spread it around. Well, they wanted to give some extra business to the resorts up north that on all the musky lakes. So they set up this huge tournament. Like I said, it's for 50 years now. It's had 500 people in it every year. It's the week after Labor Day. So usually resorts are starting to clear out and that kind of thing. Yep. So it's a huge tournament there. It's you fish all day Friday, all day Saturday, half day Sunday, and then we have the prize, the big giveaway and
this is a photo, take a photo, measurement
kind
of a thing.
Yep. We've gone to cameras. We got bump board, take a picture on the bump board, text it in, and call in, and that there's a live leaderboard for that. It doesn't say what lakes people are on. Because everybody will jump lakes. Yeah. And we've actually cooperated with the DNR to limit movement. We now have like 5 different zones that you have to go through decontamination to move from one zone to another. We get all boats must be inspected beforehand. We're the first major tournament to cooperate with the DNR to do full decontamination before the start of the tournament and if you change zones. So they'll circle 5 lakes that are in a zone that all have the same issue, and you can't leave that zone unless you go through a decontamination station, and we get them stationed around. So we're doing everything we can to be the leader on developing that. They gave us like a month notice, and we implemented it on the largest musky tournament in the state in no time a few years ago, and people got used to it in one trip around. Everybody kind of cooperates with it.
You know what's coming. It makes it easier for you to plan your strategy. If you're going to let's fish this zone, and then we'll do this, and we got to contaminate, and then we can go fish that zone, and then.
And we prizes for that are significant. Like I said, it's like we used to do a boat. We've decided to split that into it's either 2 or 3 prizes. So it's like 3 $5,000 prizes. That's based on the total number of people that are in it, but it's roughly around there. And then we've got 10 places that are resort stays and rod and reel combos, a bunch of tackle, that kind of thing. So it's a big tournament. We get there's some major people that, I mean, Larry Dahlberg has fished it, and a few of these other, big time names have fished it. And then we have another Metro-wide tournament. The one that's this weekend is not a Twin Cities Muskies Inc. one. We have one. George Wall was a guy that was one of the early members of Muskies Inc. He has a tournament. He's basically the guy that got White Bear Lake established, and it was his favorite lake. So it's called the George Wall Tournament.
Cool.
It's full Metro-wide. It's a one-day tournament. That's in October. Or no, it's the end of September this year. We got to move it into September. We're always straddling lake turnover on that one, trying to go, okay, let's not go right in the smack in the middle of turnover.
That's
but
tough.
I think it's the 26th of September or something. That one's a full Metro-wide.
They're usually still hot in the end of September.
Yeah, it's usually still, it hasn't hit the mid-50s.
Sweating in the goose blind usually at that weekend.
So that one's Metro-wide, but it's only a one-dayer, and then the big feed and everything, we usually have like a pork chop feed or something over at Thorne Brothers. And that one's a pretty significant prize, too, and that one raises money just for stocking fish.
Cool.
In the Metro. So that's a pretty cool tournament, too. That like I said, those are on the far end of the season yet, but everybody goes north in the middle of the summer. So
right,
that's just the way it goes.
It's just what they do.
Yep.
Cool. Any Instagram, any of that, or is it Facebook primarily?
Pretty much Facebook is our.
If somebody wants to join Muskies Inc., what's the best route?
Right on our website, the Twin Cities chapter of Muskies Inc. has got a link there to sign up. So it's kind of slow getting through the national, but you'll get if you sign up and even contact a board member, you can start getting the monthly newsletter and all that stuff well ahead of when you get your information back from the national.
Okay,
so
cool. I know when I was a member, I never won a damn thing at them drawings when I go to a meeting.
I won.
The worst luck, man.
I had most of my rods and reels I won at meetings.
God, that just seems. It probably seemed worse than it was just because me and my buddy Jimmy, we were broke. So it's like the idea of winning a nice rod and reel combo. Where it's like, I need that, and then never win it. You're like,
I probably won 4 of them when I first started.
With a fully decked out boat with 20 rods wins it. You're like, he doesn't need another one.
And then we have a sportsman's banquet in the winter. We're just narrowing in on our date, but that's over the winter. I think we moved it back to January, but I'd have to. Well, there will be information coming out on that, but that's a big one. I won a rod and reel combo. My wife won a rod. We give away a ton of prizes at that. It's not just Muskies Inc. people.
Okay.
That's probably maybe a third of the people that attend that banquet are Muskies Inc. members. So we get all kinds of people, and we'll have gun tables. We'll have obviously fishing tackle, a ton of that. Sometimes we have ice fishing equipment. My dad won an auger a few years ago.
Nice.
So we got a wider range of prizes for that. It'll be guided trips from people all over the state. Resort stays in Minnesota and Canada, that kind of thing. So that's a pretty big.
But not Naughty Pines Fish Camp.
But not Naughty Pines. You just go to the sport show and you just register, and every other one of you gets the winner. Yeah, as soon as you get there, you figure that deal out. I remember my wife. Well, she was my girlfriend at the time. She's like, I won this trip.
Too.
Yeah.
Oh man,
it's a gimmick.
What
pretty
the
funny.
hell?
But I have to say, I did catch a nice. I caught a 30-pound muskie.
That's the thing. Once we realized it, we're like, you know what? We're here. This is what it is. Let's make the best of it. Let's just go fish.
I think that was my Fishmas card that year. So for like 20-plus years, I've done a Christmas card with me with a fish to send a
Fishmas card.
And the fish I caught there, even though clipping the hooks, I cut my face, and I had blood dripping down my the barb hit me in the cheek when I was clipping hooks, and I had blood dripping down my face. But that one made my Fishmas card, so I was pleased.
Fishmas card. That's hilarious. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Thank you very much for doing this. This is great.
Great discussion. We kind of roamed all over, but that's all right.
Hey, as far as the ones I've done, we really limited the rabbit holes. I mean, this might be
on topic.
Yeah, this was I think easily the most on topic one I've done. I mean,
that's good.
A couple ventures into other things, hunting and whatever, but that's kind of I'm an all outdoorsman, and that's kind of what this podcast and Full Scale Outdoors is all encompassing. So I like drawing analogies. Because I think it helps some people that don't, if they're not into muskies, but I can tether it to what they are passionate about. So then when a situation does come up about maybe muskies coming into their lake, maybe they have some logic and some reasoning to mix in with, like, well, I guess muskies wouldn't be that bad. It seems like there's muskies in this lake and it's doing okay, and I guess it's not that bad. I mean, we got to remember we are all, as sportsmen, we're all in this together.
Yep.
Except for not you pleasure boaters. You're just a pain in the ass. You're not helping anything.
They wouldn't listen to this.
No, they won't. They won't. I don't have to worry about that.
They're the ones that look at it as a sheet of water to drive around on.
Right. Cool. All right. Well, good luck out there, and catch some big fish. Post them up on the Full Scale Outdoors site. I'll share.
I'll do that.
I'll
put my 45 from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, do it. When you got anything coming up, reach out. We can do this again. Whenever you want, or just send me a link. Feel free to post links on that page too. If you got stuff coming up, use it as your personal sounding board or whatever. Share. I'll try to share your stuff as much as I can. Send it my way, and I'll put it out there. Cool.
Thank you,
Matt.